Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/GOM.
Who taught you that shite?
The greatest swordsman who ever lived. Syrio Farrell, the first sword to the Sea Lord of Bravos.
Bravos. Greasy-haired little bastard of it. They all are.
What do you know about anything?
I bet his hair's greasier than Joffrey's cunt.
It was not.
Was? He dead?
Yes.
How?
He was killed.
Who by?
Meryn Trant. That's why Sir Meryn's
Meryn Trant. The greatest swordsman who ever lived, killed by Meryn fucking Trant.
He was outnumbered.
Any boy whore with a sword could beat 3 Meryn Trant.
Syrio didn't have a sword. Or armor, just a stick.
The greatest swordsman who ever lived didn't have a sword. All right. You have a sword. Let's see what he taught you. Go on, do it for your verbose friend. Dead like all the rest of your friends. Your friend's dead, and Meryn Trant's not. Because Trant had armor, and a big fucking sword.
Seven blessings, perfumed seneschals and ice river clansmen, and welcome to Game of Microphones. I'm Lord Stirling, Sir Duncan, explorer of the Great White North.
And I'm Lady Rachel, Queen of Insomnia.
And this is episode 77.
On this episode of our series Rewatch, we are covering Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 5, First of His Name.
And in case you're not already aware, this series rewatch is from the perspective of someone who's current on the show. That means you've seen up through Season 7. So if not, there's still time to have Hodor lift you up by the neck and twist your head off so you don't have to hear these spoilers.
Warning.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All right, let's jump right into it. Sound good?
Let's do it.
Nice.
Yes.
Let's start with your number 5.
Okay, so this was a good episode.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff that came in this episode. And so my top 5 is conquering versus ruling.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the scene of Dany when she kind of hears what's going on in Slaver's Bay, and young Kai re-enslaved the freemen and swore to take revenge, and Astapor, the council has been overthrown by a guy named Cleon, which I thought was funny.
He's a butcher, right?
He's a butcher, yes. And, you know, I love Dany's sentiment kind of in this scene, which is echoed in Season 7. And she says to Jorah, "You counseled me against rashness once in Karth. I didn't listen. It all worked out well." And it reminded me of when, I think we talked about this last episode too, when they're on the beach at Dragonstone and she's just found out that they've lost
the fleet, right? The Greyjoy
the
fleet, Yara's
yes,
half.
Yara's. And, you know, Jon kind of says, you know, if you just go in there like burning cities to the ground, it's just more of the same. And he advises her to not do it, and then the next scene is the loot train battle.
And it worked out all right.
And it all worked out all right. So I thought that was kind of a great foreshadow. But, you know, in this moment, she's realizing the major difference between conquering and ruling. It's easy to just kind of like roll through cities and conquer them and take them over. But ruling is actually taking care of her people and making sure that they don't fall back into bad hands. So
Right.
this is a lesson that she's learning here.
And it's so sad too, like if you're doing all this hard work, conquering and then having
And a
all
butcher
of your,
takes it over?
yeah, who declares himself his imperial majesty. Like, oh God.
Yes.
Power vacuums can be dangerous.
I just liked this scene because it's a great educational moment for her. And, again, in this scene, she's kind of I don't want to say disobeying Jorah, but just not listening or agreeing with his advice. Like, she's going to do something about it. And she realizes that she needs to prove herself as a ruler in Slaver's Bay to, in the future, take over Westeros. Because she was basically saying, the houses or actually Jorah said this, the houses of Westeros are going to flock to whatever side that they think is going to win.
Right.
They're not just going to follow her blindly, which is something that Master Illyrio whispered in her brother's ear in the very first episode of
Sowing dragon banners in secret.
Yes.
They'll wave them upon your arrival.
And so Dany knows this is a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
I have to prove myself as a leader or as a conqueror or a ruler. And she learns the difference between the two in this scene. And, Jorah's point, 10,000 men cannot conquer Westeros. It's going to be chaos unless Dany proves herself as a leader. And
Right.
I think she kind of learns that lesson in this scene.
Totally. And she sort of realizes that it's not enough to be a Targaryen or just to be the mother of dragons, because why should anybody trust her? She says, why should anybody follow me? She realizes that she needs to represent something bigger than herself. It's freedom and the the elimination of oppression. So I just love I know a lot of people don't really like the Slaver's Bay stuff, all the marine stuff, how it takes so long and everything like that. But I find it fascinating, and I love the political dynamics and the struggle that Dany faces to realize what she stands for and to hone her philosophy, before she's
Truly.
It's like a dry run, before she's ready to go back to control and rule over 7 kingdoms. She has to be able to handle at least 3 cities in Slaver's Bay first.
Exactly. So she's understanding that it's one thing to conquer and it's a completely different thing to rule and have those political, kind of pillars, if you will, to, hold up her claim as to why people should follow her.
Yep.
That's going to be echoed when she takes, when she goes back to Westeros. If
Definitely.
she has that under her belt, that she is controlling Slaver's Bay, which at the end of the Myronese story, she changes it to the Bay of Dragons.
Yes, love that part.
And so far up to where we are currently in the show, we haven't really heard back about how Slaver's Bay or the Bay of Dragons is doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that they kind of close that story loop in season 8 somehow, that it's either peaceful or it's falling again.
Yeah, hopefully we get a scene with Dario over there doing his job.
I'm hoping so, because I love Dario in this scene too. Dany finds out that, well, first she also finds out that Joffrey is dead in this scene.
It's a big moment.
That's a big moment in this scene. And she also finds that Dario took the Myronese Navy because he heard she likes ships.
Oh, yeah, that was so funny.
Who told you to take their navy?
No one.
So why did you do it?
I heard you liked ships.
And she's like, you shouldn't have done that, but then she's like, how many ships?
How many men can they carry? Would that be enough
Which
to
is
take
great.
King's Landing?
Yeah. So I like this scene. I am personally not really a fan of the Myronese story. I think it takes too long to cover a short amount of ground as far as her development goes.
Sure, which is understandable.
But I agree that it's important for her development. It just, it could be done a little bit quicker.
Sure. It's good. I think it's good for a podcast to have, like, you know, not necessarily to have us both agree 100% on everything too, you know, it'll give us
I agree
more
with that.
diversity. Also, I think it's worth saying that Dany just looks beautiful in this scene.
Oh my God, she's freaking gorgeous.
Yeah. So I was just watching and I'm like, wow, she looks really, really beautiful.
I love her dress with the sides cut out of it.
Ooh, I am having difficulty remembering because I was just so fixated on her face.
I think out of all the costumes, from a female perspective, her and Sansa have been my favorite as far as like what they wear. When I say Sansa, I love the dress that she is wearing when she's walking with Tyrion, talking about sheep shift. I love the sleeves on that dress and like the pop of color, and you know, Dany, especially as her character grows, her costumes are awesome too.
Oh man. Have you gotten to the point in the books yet where they describe her Dothraki outfit that she wears?
It's been a while since I've read it, but yes, I'm past that.
That would have been something cool to see in the...
Wasn't her boob hanging out?
Yeah. That's it's like
That's
traditional right. Dothraki fashion to have like one of your boobs hanging out, and yeah, that would have been cool.
Which
to see
we
on the
do
show,
see at the wedding. We do see it at her and Drogo's wedding.
Right? Yeah.
Like the women of the Dothraki, their boobs are flapping all over the place. And, you know, some of them have one out and one in.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, totally.
What is happening here?
This is very foreign and kind of intimidating.
I love that white jacket she wears in season 7 when she goes north of the wall. I'm like, oh my God, I want that jacket
I've
so bad.
I've seen some really good cosplays where they like nailed that jacket.
Yeah, and I think for the guys, I really like Jon Snow's.
Oh yeah, he's always got something cool on. I like the Jaime's Kingsguard armor too, with the scales and everything. I really love that armor, big white capes and everything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All of the costuming in this show is just incredible.
I like the Night Kings too.
Yeah,
not just like the CGI aspect of the Night King, which is so awesome, but I really like what he wears too. It reminds me of Tywin.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you look at his outfit.
Baelish always has cool clothes too.
Yeah. The long coats. I do like Baelish's as well.
Definitely. Anything else you want to add about this scene?
No, I think that was it. How about you?
I think that pretty much covered all of my notes for that scene too.
Awesome. Okay, what was your number 5?
My number 5 is economic conquest.
Okay.
Okay, so the scene starts out with Tywin and Cersei planning out weddings. And it's pretty funny because Tywin decides to give Marjorie a fortnight to mourn Joffrey's death, which is like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So that's like nothing, which is funny. And they mention, this wedding is going to be more bare bones. No jugglers, no jousting dwarves, no 77-course meals. And that was something that I wanted to mention in our coverage of the Purple Wedding episode, that there's 77 courses at that wedding of food.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so when Marjorie wants to donate like the extra food to the homeless, basically, to the small folk, that would have been a lot of food, basically.
It's not even leftovers. It's like just uneaten food.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, so it's pretty fucked up when Cersei like says feed it to the hounds instead, Yeah,
it could have probably fed like a really decent part of the city.
Yep.
I was going to say half, but that's not true.
Yeah. And then she actually sort of agrees to marry Loras here, which I found surprising. Like, she's being surprisingly agreeable to Tywin with this whole scene.
Yes, because she wants something out of Tywin in this scene.
Mm-hmm. True. And we got a funny little line about like the sort of the dynamics between Tywin and Robert. He says, "I didn't like your husband," like talking about Robert. He used to pat me on the back a lot. I didn't trust him. I thought that was kind of funny.
Then didn't she say neither did I?
Yeah. Yep, we had that in common.
I love how she agrees to marry Loras a fortnight after the mourning is over.
Yep.
Or the marriage is over. It's like, that's just a standard
Fortnite
set of time for mourning and weddings.
Yeah, totally. So then they're going on to talk about how it's necessary to combine forces with the Tyrells. Like they're only one true rival in terms of resources, and they need them on their side, and that's the Tyrells. They got all that food, like the rich farming of Highgarden and the Reach, and they're very wealthy as well. And Tywin goes on to explain here that Casterly Rock is no longer mining gold. And it's kind of funny the way it happens. He's like, "Do you know how much gold was mined in the Westerlands this past year?" And she's like, "Haven't a clue. Go on, your best guess." And she says, "Pounds, tons, ounces." And he replies, "Doesn't matter. The answer is the same." And that is bad.
That totally confused me at first. I was like, what? I'm like, oh, 0.
Yeah, 0. She knows immediately, that can't be. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so fucked up.
It was such a great way of explaining it, because it really did. When I first watched it, I was like, what?
Yeah, same here.
I'm like, oh, it's 0.
Yeah. So their last working mine ran dry 3 years ago, which is fucked up. And we learn that how do they pay for anything, and it turns out the Crown owes the Iron Bank of Braavos a tremendous amount of money. Like, we were talking a fuck ton of money, a loot train worth of money,
Right.
And so she's like, there has to be someone you can talk to, come to some arrangement. And he's like, listen, the Iron Bank is the Iron Bank, And at this point, I'm thinking, oh man, the Iron Bank is becoming a fixture on the show. Like, out of nowhere, we're getting a good amount of world building in season 4, where Dorne is being introduced. We're learning more about Braavos and the Iron Bank. And Tywin basically goes on to explain a little bit about the Iron Bank, and that it's over 1,000 years old or more, and everybody lives in its shadow, and almost none of us know it.
I liked that scene that moment because it shows like a little bit of nervousness with Tywin.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't like that. He doesn't like being in debt with the Iron Bank, because he knows that they always the Lannisters collect their debts.
Yeah, and he goes on, you can't run from them, you can't cheat them, you can't sway them with excuses. If you owe them money and you don't want to crumble yourself, you pay it back. And I love it, because it not only shows that Tywin is like revealing a vulnerability, but it also is a very key piece of wisdom, because banks, I'll put it this way, my point's called economic conquest, right? There's 3 different types of conquest. I probably talked about this before on the show. There's military conquest, but you can't keep troops motivated all the time and believing in the cause, right? So eventually there'll be mutinies, like at Craster's Keep,
or Robb Stark.
Yeah, Robb
with
Stark.
Bolton.
Yeah, you can't rely on military conquest 100% of the time. Then there's religious conquest, and religion comes from the word relegate, or the relegare, the Latin, which means to make subservient, which is interesting. So, there's religious conquest, but you can't convince everybody to believe what you want them to believe all the time, so it's not entirely reliable. Then there's the third type of conquest, which is economic conquest. And it's the most insidious type of conquest because it's mathematical and calculated, and most people don't even understand it, and it just flies right by everybody. So when Tywin says we all live in its shadow and almost none of us know it, that is the perfect way to describe economic conquest, that there's banks making, lending out money to both sides of the war, taking control no matter what in the end. Banks are the men behind the curtain, central banks basically, and it's just a really key piece of info that he's dropping on her here. So I thought it was really significant that we're learning about this. Pretty poignant.
Yeah, that's a really great pickup. That it's a really great way of explaining kind of what goes on in our world too. You know, we all kind of live under this veil of debt, really. I mean,
money
most
is
Americans
debt
have
nowadays.
some sort of debt. you know, it's
if you look at the top of a dollar bill, it says Federal Reserve Note in the U.S., and note literally means debt. So whereas the money used to be backed, like it was a commodity-backed system, where the 1792 Coinage Act defined a dollar as 371.25 grains of silver, it was changed subsequently to have a debt-backed system. Basically, central banks print money out of thin air. They loan it to the governments, and the governments then owe that as a debt to the central banks. They have to pay back the debt plus interest. So in order to pay back the interest, they have to borrow more money from the bank, which creates an ever-expanding pool of fiat money, of debt-backed currency. And it, as the pie expands and expands, each unit, dollar or mark or whatever it is, becomes worth a little bit less. And that's inflation, is the increase of the monetary supply resulting in the devaluation of the currency. So banks, basically, when they issue currency, they're essentially stealing from the future, because they get the immediate benefit of the new money at the market rates that are existing at that time, the value of the currency. And then once it trickles down into the system, it weakens all the rest of the dollars. So banks can dictate which areas of the economies grow by who they lend credit to. They can dictate the using interest rates. They can expand and contract economies as a whole. Economic conquest is a real thing, and so Tywin is very, very smart, and that means that George R.R. Martin is really smart, and
yeah,
you know,
he's a genius.
Yeah, it's just something that I wasn't expecting to see covered on this show, because it's never really covered in anything. You know,
sure.
99% of people have probably never even heard the phrase economic conquest. So it's kind of cool, and it's scary at the same time.
Yeah, and I like that even a man as powerful as Tywin seems weary of it.
Definitely, like nervous about it. Like it's something he can't even control, you know?
Exactly. Like he can deal. And we also see in this season too, him pick up kind of a little bit of tension and nervousness with Dany across the Narrow Sea.
True, with what he said to Tommen last week.
Yeah. So I think he's starting to feel the pressure of, he's defeated the Starks in his mind, and he's realizing that while they've been dealing with the Starks, they have the Tyrells to worry about, and they need to form an alliance with really quickly, a few alliances to tie them in multiple ways to the Lannisters.
Yeah.
And the Iron Bank. I mean, that's a threat, to be in that much
Huge
debt.
Threat.
And like you said, Tywin is smart enough to know that. So I think he's starting to realize, like, Robb Stark was just a peg on the wheel. Like, they have a lot more people to roll over before they're safe. And he makes this point when, was it him that said it or Cersei? I don't have it listed in my notes, but it says, "Who can we trust ourselves alone?" And I find that interesting because Tyrion is one of them, and Tyrion ends up killing Tywin. Oh,
yeah, true. Good point.
Over what's about ready to happen, why they are talking initially, and why Cersei is being so lenient with Tywin, which is she wants this trial to go a certain way, and she's going to try to convince her dad.
Yep. And it's funny, too, because Tywin is, like, the only one, Tyrion kind of, too, aside from killing Tywin. Tywin's the only one that is really trustworthy. Like, he lays out the truth, He stands by his word, even if you don't like his perspective or whatever. He's pretty honest to the family, at least. Cersei, can't trust her. Jaime, can't trust him, really. He's got his own, like, ulterior incestuous motives. It's pretty funny just how none of them can really trust each other.
No, exactly. So it's a very telling scene for Tywin as far as what makes him sleepless at night, if you will.
Yep. And he lays it out. He says, vesting the Tyrells in the crown will help a great deal in this respect, talking about the debt to the Iron Bank. So he's basically just roping in the Tyrells to drain their exchequer, and
right.
Get them to pay for the royal bill, basically, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So that's the motivation for allowing Marjorie to marry Tommen, and continue to try to marry into the Lannister/Baratheon family.
Yeah, it's a good scene. I also like how he tells Cersei, like, I'm not going to discuss the trial with you. Like, I'm on to you. Why you're being so lenient.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to do it. And she says, you started wars to protect this family. You turned your back on your legacy for refusing to contribute to its future. What does Tyrion deserve for lighting that future on fire? She's trying to, dig at him like, you have done all these things for, like, in her mind, lesser crimes.
Right, totally. And that's the last line of the scene too. What does Tyrion deserve for lighting that future on fire?
Yeah. So, do you have any other notes on this?
I think that pretty much wraps it up. We get a good lesson in conquest, and we learn about something that, form of conquest that most people don't really understand, which makes it all the more dangerous. And we learn about the ulterior motive for trying to rope in the Tyrells to to join the royal family, basically, so they can pay back all that dough that the Lannisters can't pay back, which is crazy.
Right.
They're going to be so pissed when they find out. Oh, wait, no, they never even find out. They get completely destroyed and all of their gold stolen.
I know. It's so bad.
Oh, my God. It's so funny, though. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 5. How about your number 4?
My number 4, I dubbed as the Redheads.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
So, this is when Sansa meets her Aunt Lysa, her crazy Aunt Lysa. And we all have a crazy aunt out there.
Yes, I know I do.
So do I.
Her name begins with L, too.
Oh my goodness. All of my aunts' names start with an A, and so does my mom's.
All of mine start with L's. And my mom.
Oh, how funny.
5 sisters. Lisa, Laura, Linda, Leslie, and Lorraine.
My moms are Annette, Amanda, who's my mom, Adele, Andrea, and Allison.
That's funny. Our families have a lot in common.
They do, yes.
Okay, so, yeah.
So the Redheads. Sansa meets her crazy Aunt Lysa, which is where that tangent went on. And we realize we know Lysa's kind of a freak when her 10-year-old's, like, breastfeeding in the earlier scenes, but we really get a glimpse into kind of her paranoia in this episode, and her just kind of, I don't know how to describe her other than paranoid and kind of manic. She's making Sansa already in this very first scene feel like her presence is a nuisance.
Yeah.
Like, let your hair down, but take the back stairs. Robin, don't call her Sansa.
Right. Oh, and speaking of not calling her Sansa and the red hair, Baelish tells her to pull up her hood because her hair is a memorable shade of red. And
right.
So hiding her identity, it sort of mirrors the way that Bran learns the lesson from Jojen to conceal his identity for strategy as well. So just thought that was a cool little mirror that's worth pointing out.
Yeah, that's a great catch. I didn't even think of that. So I loved that, you know, as a first-time viewer of the show, you would not probably catch this. And we do find out about it later in this same episode. But when Robin tells Sansa the Lannisters killed his father with poison, Lysa gives Baelish like this look,
right?
Like thug life look.
I noticed that too.
The glasses go down.
Yeah, that was great. She gives him a knowing look.
Yeah, and we do find out that it was Littlefinger that told Lysa to pour the poison in the wine, and I think I have that in my notes somewhere.
Yeah, it's right after Sansa walks out of the room.
Yeah.
And she rushes over to kiss Baelish. What took you so long? Yes. Arranging for the ascension of King Tommen I, extricating Sansa, getting her here alive. We've spent more than enough time on her for one evening. Let's get married tonight, you know. And when he tries to dodge it, she's sort of like manipulates him by bringing up all the things that you know that she's done for him, like what wife would do for you the things I've done. What wife would trust you the way I've trusted you, you know, when you gave me those drops and told me to pour them into Jon's wine, my husband's wine, you know? And she's like manipulating him with it, which is kind of funny.
And I love his line, only speaking of it makes it real. Because it's just like, if you talk about it, if you keep talking about it, it's going to come back to get us, you know, which it does.
The deed is done, faded into nothing.
Does Sansa accuse Baelish in season 7 of killing Jon Arryn when she executes him or has him executed? I feel like she says something about Jon Arryn in that scene, and I just can't remember.
I can't remember. She probably does, because Bran knows everything, right? So she probably got the scoop from Bran.
Yeah, and so I liked this line, because in my mind, for some reason, I feel like she said that.
Right,
and I could be wrong,
right.
So I don't want to be like 100%, but for some reason I feel like Jon Arryn is mentioned in his death scene. So when he says only speaking of it makes it real, like it's been spoken about multiple times, and like you said, Bran's the one that's seen it and likely told Sansa and made it real. Like he got punished for his crime, and she just kind of continues to like, oh, we had our wedding night years ago. And I know you get a little bit more of their story in the books about their like early love story, like that they had, you know, spent the night together and had sex. And even though Peter loved Kat, and I know you don't really get much of that on the show, but I like that there was a little nod there to the fact that she really has loved him a long time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot more to that in the books. Some interesting stuff.
Yeah, so I also like when he said one man can be worth 10,000. And it's another glimpse into kind of Littlefinger's way of thinking, and it reminded me of Tywin talking about the Red Wedding. It's like, you know, so you would be willing to sacrifice 10,000 men over a dozen at dinner. I think he says that to Tyrion, and it's kind of the same sentiment here. So we kind of get a glimpse that Tywin, Littlefinger, and Stannis all kind of think similarly as far as sacrificing the few for the many.
Definitely.
And it's really funny because at the end of where we are at currently in this series, all 3 of those men are dead.
True. Very interesting. Great minds die alike.
Yes, and so then we see, you know, like Littlefinger finally says, okay, let's get married. We should notify the Lords of the Vale. And she like throws that creepy dress over her shoulders and goes and gets the sept.
Right, she just opens the door and everybody's
and he's
all
there
ready.
waiting. It's so creepy. And Littlefinger's face is so funny. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah, he's overwhelmed. You know,
Like,
we don't see him overwhelmed much.
No, of course she would have the scepter waiting and witnesses waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's gonna scream so loudly on her wedding night. And then you cut to Sansa like listening to it, and it's just, oh my God.
Yeah, and she was not
so
lying
bad.
either. She's totally screaming.
Yes.
Immediate wedding.
For sure. And I do want to just backpedal. I think when they show the Eyrie from the Bloody Gate, I think it's my favorite castle.
It's amazing. Like on top of like a hollow mountain.
I know.
Oh,
and
man.
I've read enough of the books to know like what a journey it is to get up there, like on the donkeys. And
yeah, that was something I wanted to mention too, is that like it is an extremely harrowing trip to get up there. Like some people
it's like
can't
a 3-day
even
process.
Do it. Yeah, like Tyrion doesn't even want to do it. They lift him up in a basket.
In a basket, like a potato basket or something.
Yeah. So funny.
Yeah.
So the moon door, which is like in the middle of the castle, that like looks down over that hollow part of the mountain or something.
Mm-hmm. Looks like it.
So trippy. There's some really, really cool artwork of the Eyrie, and if you get a chance, listeners, go back and pause it when you get a view of the Eyrie and just take a good look at it. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. I've paused it actually a few times, and I'm so impressed with, first of all, George R.R. Martin's imagination of the castle, of the detail, like especially in the books, each stop along the way.
Yeah, like the little pathways you got to cross where there's like open air on both sides and you're crossing a little tiny bridge of stone, and then
the donkeys just know where to go.
Yeah, like there's little footholds cut out from like near vertical sheer rock faces, and the donkeys just like know exactly where to step to get their way up.
I think we get this from Kat's point of view chapters, if I'm not mistaken, when she's going up to the Eyrie.
Yeah.
They really spend a lot of time on her journey up there. And I love the CGI. I think they really captured very closely what would be my imagination of that castle from George R.R. Martin's description of it.
We don't get to meet, what is her name, Maya Stone on the show, do we either?
No, you don't. Not the guide. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she's one of Robert Baratheon's bastards.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's sort of hinted at, I believe. Yeah, dark black hair, like, yeah. Pay attention when you
Blue
read.
eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there is a...
Well, isn't Sky the bastard name for Eyrie too? The Eyrie or the
Sky? I think, yeah, maybe. She's Stone. Which is
Stone.
like Riverlands, maybe. I can't remember.
No, that's Rivers.
Oh yeah,
but
Rivers.
they're east of the Riverlands, so maybe Stone is a bastard name.
Yeah,
Be curious if any of our listeners know about that.
So I went and Googled it, and the bastard names are as follows. For the Reach, it's Flowers. For the Westerlands, it's Hill. For the Iron Islands, it's Pike. For the Riverlands, it's Rivers. For Dorne, it's Sand. For the North, it's Snow. For the Vale of Arryn, it's Stone. For the Stormlands, it's Storm. For the Crownlands, it's Waters. It's also worth noting that this system does not apply to the bastards of Smallfolk. At least one parent, usually the father, has to be a member of a noble house. So if both the mother and father are commoners, the child cannot use the bastard's surname. So interestingly, possessing a bastard's surname is simultaneously a mark of distinction and a badge of shame. So anyone who meets a bastard with a bastard surname will immediately know that they're not simply a bastard, but the bastard child of a noble. And I found another cool thing, which basically gives bastard names for each of the states in the U.S. So all 50 states are given a different bastard name based on suggestions from people who lived in the states. So California would be gold. Connecticut is nutmeg. Although I would have said oak. Rhode Island is mist. Massachusetts is pine. Florida is sun. Texas is star. Alaska is ice. Hawaii is sand. And I'll post a link to it on our Facebook page. So go to facebook.com/GOM podcast and it'll be linked up there. Back to the show. Yeah, I love how each of the kingdoms has their own bastard names. You know, it's so cool.
It is really cool.
Other thing that I thought was interesting. Oh, you mentioned that, you know your strengths, use them wisely. One man can be worth 10,000. The fortress built at the area has never been overcome in over 1,000 years because it's easily defendable because it's just so difficult to get to. It reminded me of how somebody says at one point that Winterfell, you could fend off 10,000 men with just 500. Similar type deal. And was it Bronn who was talking about the Eyrie?
Being impregnable.
Yeah. Oh, give me 10 good men and I'll impregnate the bitch.
I know. It's so funny.
Great line. So when we get up there and Lysa's talking about all of the suitors that have come to try to get her hand in marriage, you know. And she's been saving herself for Peter Baelish. But the way that he arrives and there's been all these suitors, like at Tyrion's trial by combat, she picks Sir Vardis Egan to fight, and all of these guys that are volunteering to fight for her are people who are suitors who are trying to get her to marry them.
Impress her, yes.
Yeah, so it made me think of all of the suitors who are lined up to marry Odysseus's wife while he's away fighting at Troy in Homer's The Odyssey.
Interesting.
Penelope just has like hundreds and hundreds of these suitors who are showing up trying to impress her with various contests of valor. And then Odysseus returns home and he returns to their castle in the guise of a beggar and proves his valor by defeating all of the other champions, the other suitors in these contests, shooting arrows through golden rings, and then reveals that it's him, and it's amazing.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I dubbed my number 4 the redheads, and the only other scene I wanted to mention between the two of them I dubbed as the lemon cake scene. That she...
Oh yeah, that was so funny.
Again starts making Sansa feel uncomfortable because, Sansa kind of puts the 2 and 2 together, like, you can't grow lemons up here, like, how do you make lemon cakes? And Peter brought, 6 crates of lemons back because he knows how much you like them. And then she starts, like, her paranoia.
Right.
Like, why does he feel that he is responsible for you? And
it's so messed up.
She's like squeezing her hands and just kind of like getting on Sansa.
You're hurting me.
Yeah, like then asking like, "Are you pregnant? Like,
what?
Do you know what the horrors do to his body?" It's like her mind is like going fucking everywhere. It's like oh my gosh, she just told you that she was a virgin. Like,
yeah,
what on earth is going on?
She rants like a total crazy lady there. It's just you're seeing the cracks. The cracks are showing.
Oh, completely. Because
she is out there.
I mean, Sansa does almost slip up when, he goes, he's loved you, he's only loved you, and right before that, she goes, because he loved my family, or your family, our family.
Cat.
And she was like, you were going to say your mother. And then she starts like wigging out even more, and Sansa's like, "Oh fuck no! Like he loves you. I'm a virgin. Oh my god! Like what is happening? We were talking about my mom getting fat on lemon cakes, and now you're like,
right? Yeah, that was funny.
Squeezing my hands and hurting me."
She's talking about Kat getting fat, and then she's like, "Oh, I didn't mean for you to stop eating."
I know. Again, it's just like kind of twisted.
Go ahead, get fat. Then way Peter won't like you.
Yeah, it's twisted.
It's so funny. It's great. I'm a virgin, I swear it.
I know, it was sad.
I'm a stupid little girl with stupid dreams who never learns, and I'm a terrible liar, so I should always tell the truth. That's what Baelish is telling her.
Exactly.
All he says is that I'm stupid.
she's used to repeating things that are said about her. And we see this at first, like when Joffrey is tormenting her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she goes, I'm loyal to my beloved Joffrey. He is my one true king. Like, I think she says that to Tyrion, and Tyrion goes, Lady Sansa, you'll survive us yet.
Yeah, he's like, sure. Yeah, right. He sees that she's playing, or trying to play at least.
Absolutely.
So this is some classic manipulation here by Lysa. She's like squeezing her hands and intimidating her and everything, and then she lets go and comes and embraces her. It's all right, you know?
Oh my God, I know.
It's like she's like the
crazy.
abusive boyfriend or husband who's like beating his wife and then caressing her and giving her a sponge bath, and and it's like a tactic that pimps use to control their women.
Yeah. It's very mental.
Yeah, beat her, then give her a bubble bath.
And this is where I was calling her kind of manic, is because like her mind is not thinking in a linear perspective. Like, he brought you 6 crates of lemon cakes, so now you're fucking him. It's like, how do you make that jump?
And then that kiss that happens when Sansa's building the snow castle, like, compounds her paranoia, and Sansa totally was innocent too.
Do you think, I have my theories. Do you think Peter knew that she was watching?
That's a great idea. I don't know, but it would definitely it would definitely be a smart move by him to put her on edge and set her up to get herself offed. Basically. To
commit suicide. Yeah, and I think he seized the opportunity when she was going after Sansa at the moon door. Mm-hmm. Maybe he was waiting for some different way to do it, but he seized that opportunity. I think he had full knowledge that she was standing there.
That's pretty great. I hadn't thought about that before. I like that. I remember one of our listeners, I think, theorizing that Baelish was a eunuch after the Brandon duel. Like after dueling Brandon Stark.
What? I didn't read that. No, tell me more.
I don't remember who it was, but this scene seems to debunk that theory because he's definitely screwing Lysa.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, or other things, but
yeah, true.
We'll assume that. But she also says, like, what things have you let him do with your body? And she actually mentions that he does things with the whores, or at least she imagines that he does things with the whores, because we know that Roz and that mysterious foreign girl, when they're going all crazy with each other, and Baelish
right. The girl with the semen face girl. Is that the same girl?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Peter, while they're doing their whatever they're doing, Peter's talking about Lysa and Kat in that scene. So he's not like partaking in their dirtiness. She actually says, like, why don't you come and join us? And he's like, no, I'm saving myself for somebody.
So yeah, that whole speculation about the vile things that they let people do to them and that Peter does them.
Yeah, I think that's her paranoia. I don't think he's actually doing it.
Yeah, all speculation.
Yeah, so I've never heard that theory that he might be a eunuch. Huh.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it, especially after this scene. So she is talking about how they're going to execute that dwarf for murdering the king, and
that filthy troll.
Yeah. And soon, Sansa, you'll be free to marry little sweet Robin. You'll be the lady of the Vale. And so we get a kind of a glimpse into how in Westeros it's kind of normal to marry like your first cousin.
Yeah. And I love Sansa's face. She's like, are you kidding me? I finally feel like I was somewhere safe. Now I have a crazy aunt to deal with, and she wants me to marry my cousin. Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Yup. Pretty brutal. That's killer. Anything else you want to add about about this scene?
No. How about you?
I think that's pretty much it. Lysa's wild and has goes on an epic rant, just total maniac. And my number 4, it kind of plays into mine, which was just revelations. There was 2 major revelations in this episode, which is that Lysa killed Jon Arryn and Baelish is responsible for the whole plotline of this series, basically.
Yes, I have that in my notes too, that Lysa and Baelish are the catalyst for the entire reason the show exists, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, so that's a major revelation that was just mind-blowing. I remember the first time seeing it, like, wow, this is all because of Baelish. He's just... He's the man behind the curtain, you know, the marionette just pulling all the strings all over all these people.
Yeah, I will be honest and say I did not catch that the first time for sure. I did not catch it. It might have been the second or even the third time I was like,
right.
Oh my God, he had her send the letter to Kat, which made Ned go south. And
yep, and Kat was
I finally realized.
Yeah, and Kat, remember when she got the letter, she was like, it must be true because, you know, Lysa wouldn't just write this. If somebody intercepted it, her head would be on a spike, you know, like she put herself in danger by doing this. So it seemed like it was true at the time.
Yes.
Oh, I noticed another good foreshadow in this episode. Lysa's death is kind of foreshadowed here.
Okay.
Peter Baelish shows up. He gives Sweet Robin a gift.
Oh, yes.
And then immediately his new gift, he basically throws it out the moon door because he's talking.
Window.
Yeah, he's throwing
door.
to Sansa like, I wanted to make the little Lannister baby man fly, you know, but Mother said I couldn't. And she's like, make him fly, you know, like what the fuck are you talking about, Sweet Robin? He's like, duh, through the moon door. Don't you have a moon door? You know? And so he gets a new toy. Yeah. He gets a new toy and immediately throws it out. And it's basically mirroring Baelish, who gets a new wife, and it basically immediately throws her out of the moon door as well.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Lysa's
what a
like
great
his
connection.
new toy, you know?
I love it.
It's so funny. And Sansa looks disgusted at the thought of throwing Tyrion through the moon door, and that's just more evidence that she's come to respect him. I'm convinced. So that was kind of cool watching this scene, little things I hadn't noticed before. Sansa's reaction to that, you know, the idea of Tyrion going through the moon door. The whole parallel with Sweet Robin and Lysa and foreshadowing her death. I like that. I thought it was funny.
I never even picked up on the foreshadowing. That's such a great pickup. And it's so true.
That's pretty hilarious.
Nice. Awesome.
So
great catch.
Thank you. So there's that revelation, and then there's the other revelation which we discussed, which is that Casterly Rock is empty of gold, and holy shit,
no.
that is big news. So yeah, that covers my number 4 as well. How about your number 3?
Okay, my number 3 is the Squire.
Nice.
And all I can say to Pod is put your hands down.
Oh, when he's riding?
Yes, it would make all the difference.
Interesting. So what does putting your hands down do?
Well, if you raise your hands, it puts tension on the bit in the horse's mouth, and it's really hard to steer a horse with your hands up because of the way their neck kind of naturally slopes upward and then downwards. Their jaw is parallel to the ground, ideally, when you ride, or at least kind of like pointed towards the ground. If you raise your hands up over your head,
Lifts their jaw up.
It's going to knock the bit on the roof of their mouth, so they're going to lift their head up. Once they've kind of locked their jaw out, it's very difficult to steer a horse that way.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So the more round their neck, like up and over, the easier it is to maneuver them.
So with their head like perpendicular to the ground, basically.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So raising your arms, if you just put your arms down, the horse will relax its neck into its natural shape. And you can turn them kind of side to side like the oar of a boat.
Nice.
It's like using a paddle versus like an oar.
So yeah,
You're going to paddle on either side versus...
So you're just providing left to right motion instead of
Yep.
like extra up and down, which could be distracting for them as well.
Yeah, and it just irritates their mouth, and they're also kind of just like what are you doing? Plus he's like, as the horse turns, he's kind of sliding around, and I want to say like tighten the girth on your saddle. Because you won't go side to side as much of it's
spinning right around the whole thing. That's
so
funny.
I love Brienne in the scene because his terrible riding is annoying the crap out of her too.
Oh, that's funny.
So we learn in this scene that they are headed towards the wall because that's where they think Sansa went.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this scene because when Sansa does finally reach the wall, she is actually with Brienne. So I thought that was kind of a nice little foreshadow. And
Oh, yeah.
And Pod. Pod's there too. Pod is at the wall too. So we get a glimpse of kind of Pod's squiring skills, if you will.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. We see him cooking a rabbit with the fur on it. And, you know, Brienne is very proud. She doesn't want him helping her with her armor, which she's clearly struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she asks Pod, you know, what did you do for Tyrion? Like, if you can't cook a rabbit, or can't ride a horse, or, you know, or any of the things that are annoying her in the scene. And I love, he just says, mostly, I just poured wine.
Yeah.
Like, he was so honest with her.
She has no respect for him, basically, at this point.
No. And at the end of the scene, she kind of does, because he reveals to her in the scene that he killed a Kingsguard at the Battle of the Blackwater.
And that's no small accomplishment.
Yeah, you can see it kind of on her face, like, what?
Yeah.
And she finally gets curious, because she doesn't ask him a lot of questions.
True.
You know, she's like, how did you do it? And he goes, I, you know, put a spear through the back of his head, essentially. And she's like, badass.
Yeah, totally.
It's like the thought the feeling, the vibe I got from her.
Absolutely.
And then that's when she invites him to help her with her armor straps.
Yeah, she basically realizes, oh, maybe he does have some potential. You know, I'm going to give him a shot.
Yeah, so
I thought that was a great moment.
It's a very short number 3, but I thought it's a great introduction into their budding, I don't want to say relationship, but budding friendship and being journeymen with each other. It's kind of similar to Jaime. Brienne throws up this huge wall.
Oh, yeah.
With the people that she travels with.
Especially men.
And then, yeah, especially men, because they've treated her like crap and laughed at her whole life. But it's a very interesting similarity, what she's doing with Pod. She was very standoffish to him, and now that he's divulged some, you know, personal information that clearly affected him, she's starting to open up to him. And they have a good relationship, you know, later in the series as well.
Definitely. It's fun. There's some funny stuff here too. She's like, I've made it this far in the world without a squire. I don't see why I need one now. And he's like, all knights have a squire, my lady. You know, and she's like, I'm not a knight. You know, and I'm not a slaver either. I don't own you.
I'm releasing you from the oath of a squire.
Yeah, I swore an oath, my lady. So funny. That means you can leave. You know.
Right.
So what do you think will happen if you leave? They'll say I wasn't a very good squire. You know? I've gotta love Pod, man. In my notes.
Yeah, he's a good character.
Yeah,
so
he's fun.
It's a short number 3, but that was my number 3.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great one. And I'm just thinking, like, who doesn't know that you have to skin a rabbit before you try to cook it? Things catching on fire and just flames shooting everywhere. And
he's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, Brienne's just
stomping
like,
on it.
What is going on here?
She's carrying all this firewood, and he's, like, stomping out the rabbit. She's like, what on earth is happening right now?
Yep. So great. So yeah, that pretty much covers my notes for that scene too.
Okay, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Craster's Chaos Part 2. Tanner, Locke, and Rast meet the stranger.
Oh, nice. My number 1 I dubbed the raid. So
okay, cool.
I'll collaborate.
Sounds
with you on
good.
This one.
So we're at Craster's Keep, and Rast is dragging a girl outside for who knows what, but it doesn't look good. And Locke and the Night's Watch decide to creep up and stealth infiltrate. Well, first Locke is sort of on his own to assess the situation. And he's going all Splinter Cell style, creeping around corners and being as quiet as he can, which is fun to watch. And he ends up discovering Bran and Jojen and Mira and Hodor hiding, and comes back and informs Jon and everything. And that's when Jojen is in there and starts having a vision when he's talking to Bran, and he sees Bran there like tied to the post, but then in the background is the tree and the northern vista. Really beautiful CG that they did on this scene. I thought it looked really nice. And he's telling Bran, you mustn't let anything stop you. And Bran is sort of beginning to lose hope. He's like, they've already stopped me. And he's like, no. Like, I've seen it, You're not here in the future. You're far from here. You're at the tree, at the hill. And Bran's like, oh my God, you've seen it too? Which is pretty cool. So they've met each other in visions before, and now they're like realizing they've seen the same stuff in their visions. And he's telling Bran of his significance, like, Mira and I, like, and even Hodor, we're only here to guide you. And I'm wondering, does he know what happens with Hodor?
I think he sees what happens to himself and to Hodor. And I wrote down in this scene that could it potentially be a foreshadow of Mira's death at some point in season 8.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because he says, we're only here to guide you. Well, he dies, then Hodor dies. We know Mira's still alive, but
for how long? She leaves Winterfell, remember? Doesn't she leave to go back to the Neck, I think? That was a really sad scene, too. She, like, pours her heart out to Bran. He's just like, okay, you can go.
Robo Bran.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I think that this is a very foretelling scene. I think Mira, she might go somewhere in the books that we're aware of, but I don't know if that's made clear on the show where she goes.
I think that she goes back to the Neck and that she is going to return with her father.
Oh, okay.
Who is Howland Reed, and he's the only guy to witness the scene at the Tower of Joy where Ned Stark supposedly defeats Arthur Dayne, but it's really Howland Reed that stabs him in the back of the neck. And then he's there to witness, Jon's birth, basically, the discovery of Aegon Targaryen, who's turns out to be Jon Snow. So that could be critical for season 8 and proving Jon's lineage, etc. With the combined knowledge that Rhaegar had an annulment that we learned from Sam and Gilly in the book at the Castle Black, combined with Howland Reed as a witness for Jon's retrieval at the Tower of Joy. And
we know Jon is heading back to Winterfell too with Dany.
Right. Yeah. So those two pieces of information are enough to solidify Jon's true, his heritage and his identity. So that's going to be really exciting. Oh my goodness!
Yes, I love that theory. That's awesome.
Yeah, Mira leaving opens the door for Howland to come. Now that she's got all this information, she could go back there, talk to him, and he's like, all right, I need to step in here. Like, information needs to be revealed,
Yes, absolutely.
So that could be really cool.
That's an awesome theory. I am looking forward to seeing if that plays out.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope it does. I'm really, really hoping to see Howland Reed in season 8. And if he does show up, I don't know about it because I've been staying spoiler free for season 8, so I don't know anything about new characters that are coming in or anything like that.
Neither do I. I'm
Nice.
trying to steer clear of
That's the way to do it.
show spoilers for season 8. So
Totally.
I don't mind it's so funny. I don't mind book spoilers.
Oh,
but-
I try to avoid both. Like I haven't read any of the Winds of Winter chapters that are out yet or anything yet.
That's funny. I have very little time to read, but when I do, I try to get through a chapter or two here and there.
Nice. Oh, this is the part 2 where Jojen sees his hand burning.
Yes. And I wanted to make that distinction because last episode that we recorded, I thought Jojen's vision was about the tree, and I was actually mistaken. So now I think he was, in that episode, this last episode, I think he was seeing Carl Tanner die, because in this episode he says, I've seen you die. Tonight I've seen the snow
Covered
fall
in
upon
snow.
your bones.
Yes. Love it.
And in this episode, we do see that he has the vision of the tree and his hand burning. So I think in my mind, I've seen the show so many times, I combined his two visions in my memory.
Right. So what do you think is the significance of his hand burning? Does it like represent how his whole body is immolated by that Children of Forest's bomb?
Well,
she
throws it with her hand, and then he explodes. So I'm thinking it's foretelling how he dies, which is being blown up and
by fire.
By fire that's thrown, and you throw things with your hand.
Yeah.
So
that was cool.
Yeah,
that's so like I love the way he's like looking at his hand and just like turning it, and oh man, it's so cool. It's a great moment in the show.
It is, and I love how he says, I have the sight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an interesting way of putting it. It's not like I can see things, because that's kind of, I can see things, well, dude, so can I.
I see dead people.
You know, like I can see things too. Like I can see the cup in front of me and my computer and my microphone.
Right. Yeah,
you know,
George has an eloquent way of putting things like King in the North, you know, like interesting little ways of saying things which sound really cool. So the sight.
So the sight is different than I can see things.
Yeah.
It's very poignant.
Mm-hmm.
And I do need to mention that Carl Tanner has a hair thing.
Oh yeah.
He's always playing
like his
with
mom's
hair
thing.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, totally.
So, you know, clearly she's about to get raped. And that's, you know, Jojen's kind of saving his silver bullet. He's like, I have the sight. I saw you die. And Carl Tanner's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. Who is it that says Carl was a top-paid cutthroat in Flea Bottom?
It wasn't Rast, was it?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I remember that line, though.
So from that line, we know that Carl has a reputation, and it, like his drunken ramblings last episode wasn't just all bluster. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So he was like a top-paid cutthroat. That's pretty serious.
He's like a famous poor guy.
Assassin, yeah. Famous poor guy, yeah.
I wanted to note, too, that Locke in this scene, you know, he's scoping out for the Night's Watch, but he sees Bran. And his real motive for being there kind of kicks in because after the scene where they say to Bran, you know, we're only here to guide you, we cut back over to Locke, who's getting back to the Night's Watch, and Jon's like, man, you are quiet.
Yep.
And so they're
How many
talking
men?
about
11 of them. And that's when
11.
Somebody in that crew says that Carl was a top-paid cutthroat.
Yes, okay, it was that scene. That's, I think, maybe what's stemmed my thought of this particular notion is Locke says to Jon, steer clear to the hut of the right side. And Jon's like, why? And he's like, oh, there's hounds. So now we know that he's going against the Night's Watch in this moment because he's found Brandon Stark.
And he probably knows that it's Ghost chained up by the like in the hounds, you know, so he's keeping Jon away from there, steering him away from saving Ghost, potentially intentionally.
Oh, no. I was taking it as steer clear to the right side of the hut because that's where Bran was and he wanted to take Bran for himself and didn't want Jon to find his brother.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
And then have to fight. Yeah, because I thought maybe he noticed Ghost
both.
is on the other side.
And his ghosts might be
keep.
like out farther away in the woods too.
Farther, yeah.
Good catch, yeah. That there's no hounds, but he's just saying there's hounds to keep them away because that's where Bran is. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And he's going to run in and grab Bran, which he tries to do, and that's when Bran wargs into Hodor and snaps his neck.
Yes, I love that part. The guy...
oh, God. Big time.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's so crazy. Hodor's freaking out, too, when Carl has his men grab Mira and chain her up, and that's what he's talking about her curls and everything.
Yeah.
And Hodor is freaking out, and then something happens, and that's when Bran says that he has this sight. No, it's Jojen. Sorry, I'm getting all confused here. He says, "I saw you die tonight. I saw your body burn. I saw the snow falling on your bones." And he's basically saying, like, don't hurt Mira. Like, I'll give you information.
Yes,
but I also like this line, "I saw the snow fall and bury your bones." And I was like thinking double entendre. Is he referring to Jon Snow, who's the guy that kills him? Is it like a metaphorical description?
Yes, I love
Jon
that. That's awesome.
And so that's when they hear the attack coming, and they to arms, they're here, the Night's Watch. And so like Tanner and these guys run out of that hut and go to battle, and Jon just rushes in with long claw blazing in all directions. And I love watching Jon fight, man. He's good with that blade, and he's real quick with it. And with that light Valyrian steel, he's got an edge, which makes him even faster than he would normally be with a blade. It's so good. And he's just like, guys are swinging at him, he's knocking the blades aside and knocking him on the ground, stabbing, thrusting down with the long claw.
Oh, I love that scene where he goes down the back of some guy's neck. He's like, "Wah!"
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's brutal.
And so while this is going on, this is when Locke decides to go in and try to abduct Brandon Stark. And so he goes in, rescue party's here, lads and lady, and he figures out that it's Brandon Stark by cutting his leg, which is fucked up.
It's the same way that Asha finds out that he's paralyzed in
when
the
he's
earlier
strapped to the horse.
Season 2. Yes.
Yeah, season 1.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, season 1.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Good throwback to that moment as well. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Good catch there. So he picks up Bran and carries him out, and that's when he wargs into Hodor, and Hodor, like, he's like Hodoring out of control, you know, Hodor, and then all of a sudden, boom, the eyes go, and Hodor is so strong, man.
I know. If he weren't such a simpleton.
Yeah. Jojen has the sight, Hodor has the strength, just like mad strong. So Jon is just trashing the baddies, man. I love watching him fight. Great posture, presence, motions. So funny. And so Hodor catches up with Locke, who thinks he's running off with Bran, but Hodor just lifts him up by the neck,
Crank,
snaps it like a twig, and then it's a really poignant moment. Bran lets go of him, releases him, and Hodor is Hodor again, and he's like, oh, and he looks down at his hands, and he's like seemingly horrified by what he's just done, as if he didn't know he didn't know he was capable of it, or he's like, did I just do that? Like, was it me? Were those my hands? You know, it's just like a really sad moment where he's realizing what he did, And
that brings up kind of a good question: does Hodor know, or do these animals like the eagle and Summer, do they know that they're being warged into, or is it kind of like they black out?
There's in the books, there's a little more detail. It seems like they're conscious and there. Hodor kind of shrinks down into the background, but he's observing, and he's observant of it.
Yeah. He knows what's happening. Okay,
he's just like, oh, like in the fetal position, kind of like, just go away. It's pretty sad.
So when this happens, knowing that, I think it's more of like, how was I capable of doing that?
Yeah, didn't know it was in him. Probably, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So Hodor gets Locke's knife, and Bran's like, listen, like, go get Jojen and Mira, go, And that's when Bran sees Jon, and he calls out to Jon twice.
Oh, I know. But, it's so sad.
Yeah, and then Jojen, like, tells him, like, listen, if Jon sees you, he's going to stop you from going north. We can't let him see us, And Bran resists calling out a third time. Very sad, like you were saying. He's my brother, and he wants to protect you. He'll take you back to Castle Black. You have to decide. Do you want to find the three-eyed raven? Hodor. And
I know.
Bran is just singular in his ambition, and like I have said, he's remarkably mature for his young age and realizing his position in the grand scheme of things, and he stays on track. Doesn't let duty overcomes love here with Bran as well. Like,
absolutely
different type of love, a fraternal love, but the love for family. He reverses the Tully words, you could say, family, duty, honor, and puts duty and honor in front of family in this case.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, Bran he's a force of nature, man. You can't stop him. And once he realizes what it takes to accomplish his mission, he will do it no matter the cost. Pretty wild. So this is when Carl and Jon end up facing off.
And Jon brings a sword to a closed-quartered fight.
That's true. Yeah, here, take it away. You can talk about this since I've already covered most of it.
Oh, no. That's okay. I mean, we can definitely collaborate. I just found it very interesting that Carl has two knives. They're in a closed quarter.
Yeah, just like Oberyn was bringing up.
Yes, and the last episode, if I'm not mistaken, we watched Jon teach the Night's Watchman how to disarm someone with two weapons. So...
Great point.
I also loved the parallel here where Jon is kind of learning what Jaime Lannister is learning, which is to fight a little bit more without honor, because while they're fighting, Carl is kind of egging Jon on. He's like, you learned from a master at arms, you learned how to fight pretty, you learned, to fight nobly.
He spits in his eyes.
He, spits in his face. And we know that Jon has picked up on kind of wildling techniques as far as fighting, but it's still pretty honorable the way they fight, in my opinion.
Generally, yeah, totally.
And this is kind of a major lesson learned for Jon about fighting with dishonor, and feels his kind of wild abandon in later battles that I think really serve him to survive.
Definitely.
So I liked this scene. There were a lot of parallels and, tying of nice little knots from last episode with the two weapons. We know that it's not a good idea to bring a sword into a close quarter fight.
And it's just amazing how good Carl is with those two daggers.
Oh my god, he's like carving up a turkey.
Yeah, and he's just catching Longclaw everywhere, and I was impressed.
Well, and Jon had all but lost the fight, in my opinion.
Yeah,
in this scene.
He spits in his eye, knocks Longclaw from his grasp, and steps on his wrist so he can't pick it up. And I have Jon is a goner in my notes.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, oh shit. And then the girl, this beaten girl and raped girl, just comes in and just like, did she stab him like in the shoulder? Is that where she stabs him?
I think it was like, like right through the shoulder.
Back?
Yeah, the back through the back, out through his shoulder. And Jon had already like he knocked Longclaw from Carl knocked Longclaw from Jon's grasp, and he had already stabbed Jon in the leg too. Remember that? Just to add to the like how fucked up Jon is getting here.
Yeah, and then I mean it totally takes Carl by surprise, and so he turns around and whacks her down to the floor, and he's not even thinking like Jon's right behind him.
Yeah, he was so like caught off guard by being stabbed. He like was not expecting that. That was the girl, like you said, that he's been raping previously. Yeah,
and then we just get a very graphic scene. The first time I saw that, I've been very desensitized to this type of graphicness. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, I cannot stomach watching The Walking Dead. I like the story of it, but it's so graphic for me. I think I stopped like mid-season 4. I just looked at my husband. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. And so the first time I saw this scene, I was very like not sensitive. I was very raw, and I would try to close my eyes at all like the terrible scenes, and I did not see this one coming, and it stuck with me for like several weeks.
Oh yeah, I love it. And stabs him right through the back of the fucking head, and
then we get that profile view of it. And
yes,
my god,
I used that for my feedback post on Facebook.
I saw.
I loved it. I actually took it, and it was really dark, so I made it brighter so it was more visible. But then he stabs him through the back of the head. The blade comes right out through his mouth. And the blade is like vertical, like it's horizontal, but it's tilted so that
it's like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah, the sharp sides of the blade are upwards and downwards. So it's got to be a good 2.5 inches wide, and it goes right out through his mouth, and it's like holding his mouth open. And then he slowly pulls the blade back out through the back of his head. And it's just like amazing, really good graphics. And I thought it was just funny that this poor woman, this Craster's daughter, who like just barely survived this scene, she just saved potentially the most key character in the show from being killed. Her preventing Jon Snow from being killed by Carl Tanner in this scene may have just saved the realm. For all that we know.
Right? If Jon, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, if Jon ends up being like Azor Ahai or defeating the Night King or something, then we can basically credit that victory to this girl who saves Jon Snow in this scene.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I've thought about Jon's kind of like divine intervention that he has in a lot of his battles.
Right, the battle of the bastards where the arrows are just raining down all around him.
Yeah, and the scene where he almost gets trampled and he gets back out. Just the scene, there's a lot of them.
Or when he comes back to life, that could be divine intervention as well.
Yes, it absolutely can be classified as that. I would agree. So, I mean, I have so many theories on who Azor Ahai could be. I think it's Jon sometimes I think it's Dany, sometimes I think it's going to be their kid that they might have, who knows. Right. And I mean, he lays a pretty good claim to it, and I know that there are some theories about their Longclaw being Lightbringer.
Interesting.
So, I mean, I've read them, but I haven't memorized them, so I don't want to go into too much detail.
Gotcha.
But I've read that I've read some theories over the years that Longclaw is Lightbringer.
Nice. Yeah, anything's possible. It'd be interesting to see. I can't wait to find out.
I know.
And we'll probably get to see the real Lightbringer too in the long night.
Yes, I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited that they're doing spin-offs.
Me too. Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. So Jon goes outside and they're collecting all the bodies of the dead, and somebody finds Locke's body, and it looks like his head is like almost twisted off.
Yeah, it's pretty snapped.
It's not only is it snapped, there's like the skin is broken, and it was like
his whole neck bone sticking out of his body.
Compound fracture. Like, yeah, it's crazy. What the seven hells could do that to a man?
It's fucking Hodor.
Hodor! Beast mode.
What up, Hodor?
What up, Hodor? Yeah, aka the Hulk.
Right? Seriously.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, that was really cool. Just brutal. And so there's 10 dead mutineers. And
where's Rast?
Where's Rast? And Rast is running away, and he stumbles upon Ghost's cage, and the gate is open, and I just am all caps LOL, as I know exactly what's coming.
I have Rast shits himself.
Yes. And then the way that they do it is perfect too. It like he backs up and he's sort of like on the edge of the screen and with open space in front of him as he's retreating. And then right as he turns, he just catches a flying ghost right to the face. He
gets his revenge for him teasing about the water, which I loved. Moment.
I know. Tormenting animals is not okay. And
no.
Yeah, Ghost totally. He's like, you remember in The Water Boy when somebody like nails Bobby Boucher and they go run the other direction, and he's like,
yes,
he's like 42. He picks out his number, you know what I mean?
Yes.
He's like, I'm gonna get him. That's what Ghost did to Rast. You know, Rast is like after the water thing, he's like 42. Like, I'm gonna get you, Rast. You know, I've got your number, boy.
That's awesome.
Hilarious. And he takes him out and flies. He like totally just horizontal motion, just flies through the screen sideways and just right to the face. Whew. Man. Gnarly.
Yes. And I had a note too. It made me think, because Jon gets reunited with Ghost in the scene, because he's like, what in the seven hells? Where have you been? I was trying to remember the last time that we saw Ghost and Jon together, and the only time I can think of was when they were on the way to the Fist of the First Men, and we see Ghost up on the ridge, and Jon is calling for him and has to keep going with the Night's Watch, and Ghost just kind of trails off.
I wasn't sure where it was either. Was he with Jon at all when he was with the wildlings? Because at the moment where Jon decided to climb the wall with the wildlings, that would be like the last moment he could have been with Ghost. You know, they would have had to be separated at that point.
I don't remember, and I could be wrong. I don't remember seeing Ghost with the wildlings, because there's no mention. I know for a fact none of the wildlings ever talk about direwolves.
Interesting.
Because, like, if you see Jon with Ghost, like if Tormund were to see it, or if Ygritte were to see Ghost, you would think that they would be like, "Oh my God, that's a direwolf as a pet. Like, why is he following you around?"
Yeah, usually it's just wargs that would be with like wolves and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think maybe the last time we saw Jon with Ghost was before he killed Qhorin Halfhand.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Ghost goes off to hunt or something.
That's a long time ago. Yeah,
it's been
that was a long time ago.
Ghost just been wandering around the north. So it's really like a feel good moment in this episode when Ghost comes, you know, trotting out of the darkness from the shadows, and Jon is so happy. I missed you, boy.
What in seven L's?
Yeah, come here.
So sweet. And he looks Ghost kind of looks a little scruffy. He's a little malnourished. You know, he's not quite 100%. You can kind of tell in that scene. But he's so happy to see Jon.
Yeah, it's great. Love it. Boy and his dog, you know?
Totally.
So this is the point where they're sort of deciding what to do next. And all of these surviving women from Craster's, Jon tries to do like the right thing and invite them to come south and be protected. at Castle Black, or even further south if they decide to go. But they basically are like, no, we're gonna figure something out up here. We'll find our own way. Craster beat us, you guys beat us. We don't trust any of you. We have each other, and that's all we need. And so he asks, you want to stay here in Craster's Keep, And they're like, burn it to the ground.
I love how she spits on it too. She's like, fuck this place.
Mm-hmm. Epic line.
And all the dead with it, she says too.
Yeah, and all the dead with it. And it's just a great moment as we watch Craster's Keep burning, and really cool.
I love the symbology of this too, because we know that Craster's Keep has for a long time been kind of a safety zone for the Night's Watch.
Oh, that's a great point.
And it's very symbolic that
it's gone.
With the burning of Craster's Keep, there's no longer safety beyond the wall.
Yep,
it's done.
Great point.
And, I think Craster's Keep was a terrible symbol of what could it was kind of a great embodiment of horror. I mean, this man is marrying and essentially raping his daughters and breeding more women to do the same thing too. Then it gets overthrown by mutineers who all they do is rape those women and beat the shit out of them.
Yep.
So it's, a great embodiment of the horror, and Jon burning it to the ground kind of symbolizes bringing the Night's Watch back to what they stand for. It's guarding the realms of men and protecting men and women from these horrors.
Totally.
And I was kind of wondering, where do you think these women went? There can't be.
Maybe they've found their way to Mance.
That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking they found Mance, or just. I can't imagine they killed the livestock. So maybe they took the livestock and just started homesteading themselves.
Yeah, maybe.
But I loved that scene of Craster's Keep burning. It was very really symbolic of moment. many reasons that place should have burned to the ground, and the foreshadowing it tells there's nothing safe beyond the wall anymore.
And yeah, totally. I like that. So that pretty much wraps up my number 3.
Okay.
How about your number 2? What you got?
My number 2 is Justin Bieber gets crowned.
Hey, that's mine too, except I called it Diplomatic Cersei.
Okay, awesome. I just laughed at Tommen's hair in this scene. It was too millennial for me. It was just kind of brushed too much to the side, so that's why I dubbed it Justin Bieber.
Classic.
But we start out in this scene that is this the first scene in the show or in this episode? I think it is.
I think so, yeah.
And we hear, may the warrior give him courage, may the smith give him strength, may the crone show him the path he must walk. And I liked just kind of those sentiments because in the Joffrey's funeral scene, Tywin kind of is schooling Tommen on these types of situations, like courage, strength, religion.
Right.
Being, kind of being on the right path as far as following his grandfather's orders.
And I must say, Tommen looks pretty stoic and regal in this scene, aside from the hairdo. He
does. I felt like the hairdo threw me off.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would have done a little differently, because he does look very good in this scene from a kingly standpoint, and the hair just kind of in his face, brushed to the side.
Good posture. Looks professional.
He's proud. Yeah. And this is echoed because, when Cersei and Marjorie are talking to each other, they start talking about who was the last decent king. He's the first king in 50 years to be up there that actually deserves it.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
So, and Marjorie even says, it might be some like constitution for the horror that put him there. And I know that she's probably immediately referencing Joffrey, but I mean, we had Robert Baratheon up there. We had the Mad King. Over the past 50 years, there's been a lot of turmoil and kings that, the Mad King killed, burned them all. Robert thought, strength was the same thing as ruling, and he didn't really manage the kingdom, which is why they're in debt to the Iron Bank. So, and then Joffrey was just sadistic.
Yeah,
so,
I liked how Cersei was describing Joffrey's behavior in this, and she's like, do you think I'm easily shocked? And Marjorie's like, no, and she's like, the things he did shocked me. Like, whoa, whoa,
yeah.
That puts it in perspective,
He would have been your nightmare, is what she says to Marjorie. And that's such a true statement.
Yeah, just like Olenna knew that to be the truth as well. Search your feelings, Marjorie. You know that's to be true.
Yeah. I just liked how Cersei also said, like, you never love anything in the world the way you love your first child.
Right.
But
no matter what they do.
Yeah, but those things, like, they even shocked me. Like, as his mother, like, that's how fucked up Joffrey was.
Yeah.
So, I do find it interesting that Cersei is kind of confiding in Marjorie in this scene.
It's so weird. Like, she's being super diplomatic to everybody in this episode.
She sees Marjorie giving Tommen, like, what I dubbed, like, the eyes. They're kind of, like, flirting with each other.
I love that part. They're making eyes at each other across the room, and Cersei, like, steps in between them.
Yeah.
Marjorie, like, looks away immediately.
She walks up to Marjorie, and Marjorie kind of pretends like nothing was happening, and there he is, long may he reign, long may he reign.
He sits the throne like he was born to.
And, but he wasn't. And when Cersei says that, they cue over to Tommen, and Lady Olenna is congratulating Tommen on being the king.
Oh, man.
So I thought that was
That's hilarious.
a great coup.
Like, you can thank me for that, boy.
Yeah, he wasn't meant to be king because of this lady.
That's
so
great.
I thought that was great. And to Cersei's point, a mother is not enough. Like, he's going to need someone.
Right.
And
implying that he's going to need you. Well, yeah, and Marjorie even says, he has you. And she says, a mother's not enough. And goes on to say, like, you're still interested in being queen, right? I'm just amazed that Cersei is being, again, so diplomatic through all this. I think she's
realizing Marjorie's going to be queen at some point. So maybe she should get on her good graces a little bit, because we even see this same kind of sentiment echoed when Marjorie's with all of her friends talking about consummating their marriage, and Cersei walks up and Marjorie just totally schools her, and Cersei's like, I'm here for whatever you need,
Right, true.
So I think she's trying to maintain some face, and we get this when Marjorie says, we're going to be faced with an alarming number of weddings. I don't know whether to call you mother or sister. And it's like a big middle finger to Cersei. Like, I'm going to be your daughter-in-law and sister-in-law. Like, we're tied together whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and usually it's like Cersei being a bitch when other people are trying to be cool, right? But this is like the reversal. Cersei is trying to be cool to Marjorie, and Marjorie is like throwing jabs at her.
Cersei's met her match with Marjorie.
For sure.
Marjorie's a smart cookie.
That's important too, that you say that she thinks she's met her match with Marjorie, because we know from her vision, or from her memory of at the beginning of, what is it, season 6, when she
with Maggie the Frog.
Maggie the Frog, yeah. we know that Cersei has been paranoid about a younger, more beautiful queen who will come and take everything from her, basically. And so she misinterprets this vision as it being Marjorie when we all know it's really Dany.
Yep.
But it makes Cersei be hostile to Marjorie, who should be, if Cersei had the full picture, she would be trying to get Marjorie on her side and forming that alliance with House Tyrell that Tywin is trying to create, because only together would the Lannisters and the Tyrells have any chance of standing up to Dany. So Cersei So Cersei, by creating this divide between her and Marjorie, is contributing to her own undoing by eliminating allies that she would need in order to put up any type of resistance to the Targaryen assault that she's going to be facing.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy with Cersei, because she gets her future from Maggie the Frog, and, you're going to have 3 children. Gold will be their crowns. Gold will be their shrouds. The king's going to have tons of kids. None of them are his, and all of your kids are going to die. And I think Cersei, hearing that at such an impressionable age as a teenager, she kind of forces that to happen. I mean, whether some of it's on purpose or some of it's, just kind of by chance. Like, I don't think she thinks that Tommen's going to commit suicide because she kills Marjorie, but in doing that and killing Marjorie, she kills her own son.
Yeah, so brutal.
And I love that Maggie the Frog theory of Cersei kind of being her own prophecy and sabotaging her own life and happiness.
Same here. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's very telling and very, very parallel to her only redeeming quality of being a mother, and having her basically be kind of big reasons that her children get killed.
Yeah. I like George says to be wary of visions and prophecies and dreams, So he likes messing with people. Like, they'll take something too seriously and it'll result in a self-fulfilling prophecy that they create by trying to prevent it from happening, or things like that. People have too much faith in visions, like Melisandre, and everything goes awry, I like that.
Well, look, even Stannis's wife, why am I blanking on her name?
Selyse.
I mean, it's the same thing. She's throwing herself with blind abandon into the Lord of Light, and
right.
She ends up burning her child and then committing suicide the day after because she can't handle what she's done. Because deep down she knows, like, it's kind of the same with Cersei. I mean, after all of her kids die, like, something does kind of snap in her and she starts really going down the rabbit hole as far as, like, psychopath goes.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Sometimes it just takes a little push. As the...
You do that voice way too good.
All it takes is a push. I'll have to send you pictures from Halloween. I did Crazy Joker Man again.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, and I had a protege. My friend Don's 10-year-old son, I did his makeup too. Made him look...
That's awesome.
Psychopathic as well.
Going back, I do love that Marjorie pretends to never have thought about marrying Tommen.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, after all of this, I'd have to speak with my father.
Yeah.
It's like she's already talked to Olenna about it, and Cersei's kind of already probably talked to Tywin about it. It's like they're just,
playing that game of words.
Yes, absolutely. So
love it.
That was my number 2. What's your number
Killer.
2?
My number 2 is Diplomatic Cersei, which covers that scene and covers her interactions with Tywin, which we covered, where she's like going along with the whole Loras thing.
Yes.
But it also plays into her visit to Oberyn. She visits Oberyn as he's writing a poem, which is pretty cool. He's a man of culture and grace.
Yes. And we've talked about that. He's very worldly.
Yes. Although he's humble as well. It's downplaying his own talent at writing poems, which is kind of funny. I didn't realize you were a poet. Not a very good one, he says, which is great. So we get to learn about the sand snakes here. Cersei asks if he's writing the poem for his paramour, Arya, and he says no, it's for one of his daughters. And he has several, we learn, 8 to be exact. And it sucks that we didn't get like the caliber of sand snakes that we get in the books. They're way, way more badass in the books.
I've heard that was a pain point for book readers, the introduction of the sand snakes being kind of a disappointment in the show.
Yeah, like they're playing patty cake, like hand slapping games. Mm-hmm. They would never do that in the books. They'd be like killing stuff and manipulating people,
stabbing each other.
Yeah, doing like really badass stuff,
Yeah.
So it's cool though that we get, at this point we don't know that the sand snakes are kind of lame on the show, so we're like, oh, the sand snakes, they sound cool as hell. 8 daughters. One of them, he says, is named after his sister Elia, so it's difficult for him to think about her or talk to her because he can't say her name without getting sad. And after he gets sad, he gets angry. The gods love their stupid jokes, don't they?
I do love Cersei when she says, perhaps that's why she's difficult.
Yeah.
Very telling with, you name her after your dead sister and you're sad and angry around her, and then you call her difficult. It's like, might be your reaction to her.
Right.
Your body language.
And then they're talking about the jokes of the gods, and she mentions how he's a prince of Dorne, legendary fighter, brilliant man, feared throughout Westeros, and she's buttering him up, but
totally.
He couldn't save his sister, and it's just like, oh, it's so brutal. And then she's saying about herself that she's a Lannister, queen for 19 years, daughter of the most powerful man alive, but she couldn't save her son. And she has a great quote, "What good is power if you cannot protect the ones you love?" And this just made me think of how it's totally like a Star Wars parallel, where Anakin Skywalker chooses to go down the path of the dark side in order to basically his motivation is to gain powers to preserve life so that he can save his love from a vision that he's having of her death. So he's motivated by a positive, idea, which is using the dark forces to protect the ones that he loves, but he ends up being like sort of enveloped in darkness and actually kills them instead by accident, which is horrible. So yeah, what good is power if you cannot protect the ones you love? Very powerful realization, and just a great speech from Cersei. And they both agree that we can avenge them. They're the ones that they've lost, and it's bizarre. Like Cersei, this is a unique episode for Cersei where she gets along with everybody. She's nice to people. She's extending olive branches to Martell and Tyrell and agreeing with her father's plans, which is just like none of this. It's like if you were to just watch this episode by itself, you would have like the completely the wrong impression about Cersei. This is an episode where she's completely different than the entire rest of the series.
I couldn't agree more. It's very out of character, but at the same time, it's very in character of her, because I think she's trying to figure out who can she manipulate.
Yep, exactly.
So she's
throwing feelers out there.
Yes, she's putting olive branches out there, testing relationships so she can take advantage. Yep. She's not looking for acceptance or love or friendship. she's looking for her next victim. I hate to say it that way, but I'm going to kind of butter Marjorie up to see if I can manipulate her to keep manipulating my son. I'm going to manipulate Oberyn to try and see if I can get him to vote my way. I'm going to try to manipulate my father to see if I can convince him to, vote against Tyrion. So she's at the point of a chess game where you have to think 6 moves ahead again. It's like you're coming up on your final couple of moves and you need to start strategizing. What can you sacrifice
to lure your enemy into a position of danger?
Exactly. So it is not characteristically like Cersei, but if you dig a little deeper and know her character well enough.
In context, it fits.
She absolutely is doing that. So,
Love it.
But it does throw a first time viewer off for sure.
Yeah. Oh man, it's great. So moves on and the conversation switches to Myrcella, and we see again how much Myrcella's absence haunts Cersei. And Oberyn is trying to comfort her, she's like, I haven't seen my daughter in over a year, and he's like, the last time I saw her, she was swimming with 2 of my girls in the water gardens, laughing in the sun, Cersei wants to believe that she's happy, and Oberyn gives his word, says, we don't hurt little girls in Dorne. And she replies, everywhere in the world they hurt little girls, which obviously foreshadows Myrcella's fate in Dorne. Sadly.
Absolutely. I love how Cersei gives Myrcella a ship.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Because she's always loved the open water, and Oberyn says, I'll have my men sail it down to Dorne. I think that's also a foreshadow because Myrcella returns to King's Landing.
Is it on that ship?
I'm not sure. I need to look at the sails again when we get to that episode.
Yeah.
I took note of what the boat looked
Very
like.
Angular, unique
Angular
looking
sails. Yeah. So I'm going to look to see if it's her ship.
Yeah, that's
My
good.
guess is that it is.
Oh, that's
but
so brutal.
I'm curious to see. I'm not 100% sure on that assumption, but she returns to King's Landing as a corpse on her ship.
So brutal.
I'm pretty sure it is, and I'm anxious to. I can't remember what episode that's in, so I didn't look ahead to double check. But when we get there in the rewatch, I'll make sure to make note of it.
Totally. It's funny too. She remember how she says, "Oh, I slaved with the goldsmith for days and days to make sure the hand was just right." In this case, she says that the best shipwrights in King's Landing have been working on this ship for months. And I believe it in this case. I don't think she's bullshitting, It's just funny. And
I agree.
You can just, Cersei and Oberyn just connect on a number of levels in this. They're both pained by the absence of a loved one, and Cersei is missing Myrcella and is visibly affected by it, and Oberyn is relating to Cersei as he mourns the absence of his sister and her children as well. They sort of connect in a little bit.
They do, and this is another scene that we see Cersei get tearful, and
yeah, true.
Just another reminder that there's a soul in there,
even if somewhere. It's a dark one.
Yes.
So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 2. How about your number 1?
So my number 1 was the raid at Craster's Keep, and I think we covered that in detail. So what was your number 1?
My number 1 is Arya and the Hound.
Arya.
And so they are doing their thing, about to go to sleep, and Arya is reciting her list. Joffrey.
Yes.
Cersei. Walder Frey. Meryn Trant, Tywin Lannister, the Red Woman, Beric Dondarrion, Thoros of Myr, Ilyn Payne, the Mountain. Would you shut up? I can't sleep until I say all the names. And this reminded me of her. You remember where she got this whole name thing?
Wasn't it from Yoren? Was that his name?
Exactly.
The Night's Watchman.
Yeah, on the way back from they're heading towards Castle Black from when he scoops her up after she witnesses Ned's execution.
Yes.
And so he was telling her about how he did this, basically, and she picks up the technique from him, which I just thought it just popped into my head. I thought it was cool that she's sort of adopted this. She picks up influences from everyone that she's with.
Absolutely.
Sort of like Sansa. It's one of the only parallels between the two characters, you could say.
Very, very good point, actually. It's their only relatable quality, even though they're sisters.
Yeah, they both learn from people they're with, which is good.
They're observant.
Yeah. So the Hound's like, shut the fuck up. She's like, I can't sleep until I say all the names. He's like, what, the names of every fucking person in Westeros? You know? She's like, no, only the ones I'm going to kill. You know, and the Hound relates, hate's as good a thing as any to keep a person going, better than most, and he hates his brother, which is a big motivation for him. So he says, we come across my brother, maybe we can both cross a name off our list. And so there's a way that they're relating, is that they both have the, this sort of foreshadows them being on the same side about something. They both have the mountain on their list, So this is pretty cool, and it's also foreshadowing the whole like Clegane Bowl concept, which is the inevitable battle between Sandor and Gregor that everybody's hoping to see.
I want to see that.
If not in the books, then in the show. All show watchers want to see it happen. So she says, "If he were here right now, what would you do?" And in a classic response,
I'd tell him to shut the fuck up so I can get some sleep.
Yeah. Go on, get over with it. Your list of doomed men. And she says, I'm almost done. Only one name left. Go on. And she rolls over and turns away from him and curls up.
The Hound.
And
I love how he looks over at her like, what?
Like amazed at her audacity and like upfrontness, and his head cocks over towards her. And I just thought that was really well done. I loved that reaction too.
And I love her like sweet little innocence when she said that. She's like, I'm almost done.
Yeah,
There's only one name left.
Yep.
It's not like you're the last one on my list, bitch.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm almost done.
She's just so matter of fact about it. Not even.
And then when she says it, she's like, the Hound. Like, she's been saying the other names in that tone of voice.
Tone,
like,
yeah. Cersei, Joffrey, the Hound. Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. So then we get to the next scene with the Hound and Arya, and the Hound is sleeping. And I'm just surprised that he's willing to sleep with Arya nearby, because she's a creepy little girl.
I know.
And he doesn't know how like truly dangerous she is yet. But this is the first time we see Arya practicing with Needle, and she's dancing around and switching
she's water
her
dancing
grips and
by a waterfall in a river.
So funny, yeah. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing? Practicing what? Ways to die." And this is potentially foreshadowing. No one's going to kill me, Arya says. And we know that she like abandoned her training at the Faceless Men, at the House of Black and White, and that chick, the waif, stabbed her in the gut. And some people think that the waif may be impersonating Arya at this point. So maybe no one did kill Arya or does kill Arya. And if the waif didn't kill her, then the odds are, it's possible. Jaqen seemed to let her go, but it's possible that they could send somebody to take her out because she knows too much and she's not part of the order.
That's true. I also like that as a foreshadow because George R.R. Martin's wife, her favorite character is Arya.
Right.
And she told George that if he kills Arya in the books, that she will divorce him. Yeah,
that's so funny. Oh, and it could also be seen as a metaphor for, a girl has no name, in which case no one supplants Arya, like metaphorically killing the identity of Arya as she assumes the no one mantra, at least temporarily, which is pretty cool. So the Hound is shitting all over her fighting style, just like just as he shits all over her trainer, as we've come to find out in a minute.
Syrio Forel.
Yeah. It's not fighting, it's water dancing. Dancing! Maybe you ought to put on a dress. Who taught you that shite? The greatest swordsman who ever lived. Syrio Forel, first sword to the Sea Lord of Bravos. And I just love, like, her hyperbole, you know. The greatest swordsman ever. Hyperbole is always funny.
Totally.
You know? So he's like, Bravos. Greasy-haired little bastard, I bet. They all are. She's like, what do you know about anything? I bet his hair's greasier than Joffrey's cunt. Which is hilarious.
Such a great line.
It was not. Oh, so you saw Joffrey's cunt, Arya? You can attest to this? And he's like, it was? He dead? Yes. How? He was killed. Who by? Meryn Trant.
Meryn fucking Trant.
Yeah, the most epic line. Everybody loves the Meryn fucking Trant line, you know? Yes. The greatest swordsman who ever lived, killed by Meryn fucking Trant. He was outnumbered. Any boy whore with a sword could beat 3 Meryn Trants. He hates Meryn Trant. Oh man, so funny. And she's like, Syrio didn't have a sword. Or armor, just a stick. The greatest swordsman who ever lived didn't have a sword. All right, you have a sword. Let's see what he taught you.
And he's making, like, good points, too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's not like...
And she's learning from him, too.
Yes.
You know,
I mean, he's being an ass, but he's also making good points.
Yeah, and it's not lost on her, you know. He's calling her out on her bullshit, and it's sinking in, I think, a little bit. You know, and if it hadn't sunk in already, he's like, go on, do it for your Bravosi friend, you know, dead like all the rest of your friends, do it, you know. And so she fucking, almost like he didn't think she would actually try to stab him, you know. She, boom, jabs him with needle, and she's surprised when it doesn't penetrate his armor. And he's surprised that she actually did it. And he backhands her across the face with his gauntlet.
Oh, God, and he hits her so hard, too. I mean, she, like, flies back.
Totally. And a very succinct way to sum up the lesson that he's just taught her. Your friend's dead, and Meryn Trant's not, because Trant had armor and a big fucking sword. You know? And that's
so
a good lesson, man. Good lesson. Jorah knows that lesson.
Yeah, especially she has like this little tiny sword needle. I mean,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Saw very visually that sword cannot penetrate armor because the Hound just had chainmail on.
Right. It can pick teeth, though.
You can pick your teeth with it, but you can't stab someone, which maybe is kind of foreshadowing to Arya's training to use other weapons other than needle, because she does kill Littlefinger with the dagger.
Yeah, Valyrian steel.
And not
the cat's paw
not
dagger.
Needle.
I have a replica of that as well.
The dagger?
Yeah, the cat's paw dagger.
Ooh, yes.
Pretty cool.
So, have you heard of the theories about the cat's paw dagger taking place of
Dark Sister?
Dark Sister?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think about those?
I think it's probably true, and that in the books we'll get to see Dark Sister in the place of like coming back from the wall with Bran, because Bloodraven is the guy in the tree. He's the Red Raven in the books, and he was the last known person to have Dark Sister, one of the ancestral Targaryen Valyrian steel blades, which was, who was it, Rhaenys or Visenya that wielded Dark Sister?
Visenya.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a slimmer blade with a handle designed to fit a woman's hand, and Bloodraven ended up with it, and he took it north of the wall. I think George R. R. Martin has confirmed this. So it would make sense in the books that Bran ends up with Dark Sister and ends up giving it to Arya, his Dark Sister. Oh, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So cool.
I do want to make one more note on this scene.
Do it.
So I'm a horse nerd, okay? Just call him like you see him. But so when Arya is water dancing in front of the waterfall, in front of the river, and the Hound kind of starts walking down the hill, behind the two of them, you see two horses, a white horse and a black horse.
Nice.
And actually, they are not horses, they are ponies.
Oh.
And this scene was filmed in Iceland. And what caught my attention was Arya does ride that white pony in other episodes, particularly when she gets on the ship to go to Bravos. When she's riding down to the harbor, she's on that white pony, and that scene is also filmed in Iceland. But the dark pony next to the white pony is supposed to be a fill-in for the Hound's horse.
Stranger?
Well, I mean, yes, whatever horse he's riding. In the show, we're not aware that he has a special horse.
Right. True.
Named Stranger. So yes, that's correct. But from a viewpoint of the show, it's just random horse that he's riding.
It's just a pony.
But Sandor, the Hound, is too large to ride a pony.
Yeah, you could say that.
So this is where my fact comes in. So Iceland, you cannot import foreign horses into Iceland due to diseases that they want to keep out because they have an extremely large population of wild ponies in Iceland. And because you cannot import horses, you cannot film in Iceland actual horses because you can't import them. You can't even put them in quarantine. They just don't allow them in the country.
Very interesting.
So this is why that there are two ponies in the background of the scene and not a pony and a horse, because it was filmed in Iceland and they cannot ship in full-grown horses to replace the ponies. So they actually have to use Icelandic ponies.
That's crazy. So what's the difference between a pony and a horse? Because I always thought that just a pony was just like a baby horse.
So a pony is a small horse.
Okay.
They can be, fully grown, but they can't pass a certain size, which I believe, I believe technically is 14 hands, and every hand is 4 inches.
Okay, so colloquially, ponies are... when people refer to ponies, they're often just talking about adolescent horses, correct?
It's
like many times
very common. It's very common, but
that's not exclusively
baby horses. Yes, baby horses are referred to as females are considered fillies, and male young horses are considered colts.
Right.
And ponies are actually specific breeds, and there are many breeds of ponies.
Okay, this is interesting.
Which also differ from, I can go on all day, Duncan, but there's also a difference between a miniature horse and a pony.
Like Lil Sebastian?
Yeah, like there are miniature horses. They're like literally the size of dogs.
Yeah, that's like Lil Sebastian from Parks and Recreation.
Yes. Ponies.
Little Sebastian.
Yeah, so miniature horses you cannot ride. They can be used for pulling carts with small children in them, but they're very small in stature. Ponies, you can actually ride them if you are small. That's why they're fairly popular with
Kids.
Young children.
Gotcha.
But they're also ornery. So I wouldn't get a pony for a kid. I would rather get like a full-size horse.
That's
But
funny.
anyways, back to my point. I thought that was a really fun little catch that I caught
Yeah, good catch.
a few watches ago. Yeah, that the two horses, and just knowing that Sandor is way too big to ride a pony, and there were two ponies in the background, it instantly clued me in, because I know a lot of those scenes with the Hound and Arya are filmed in Iceland.
Right.
And so it was just a great reminder of where these episodes were kind of filmed.
Yeah, there you go. There's your explanation.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So my little fun horse fact of the day.
Nice. So that pretty much wraps up my number one. And I'm actually all out of notes, too. Do you have anything else you want to talk about this episode?
No, I was just going to say I'm all out of notes as well.
Cool. All right. Then we will take a little break, and we'll be right back with you.
This song is called 5,000 Candles in the Wind. Up in horsey heaven, here's the thing. You trade your legs for angels' wings. And once we've all said goodbye, you take a running leap and you learn to fly. Bye, bye, little Sebastian. Missed you in the satisfaction. Bye, bye, little Sebastian. You're 5,000 candles in the wind.
And we're back with news about Game of Thrones. Our first piece comes from Screen Rant. Game of Thrones Theory. The Long Night will tell Azor Ahai's story. By Hannah Shaw Williams. With George R.R. Martin's recent confirmation that HBO's Game of Thrones spin-off is titled The Long Night, we think that the next slice of historical fantasy could explore the life of legendary warrior Azor Ahai. Though he's never appeared in Game of Thrones, on account of dying thousands of years before the show begins, Azor Ahai's presence has been felt through the machinations of Melisandre, a devoted disciple of the Lord of Light, who believes that the time has come for Azor Ahai's successor to rise. At first, Melisandre believed that Stannis Baratheon was the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, but her focus has since shifted to Jon Snow, whose life story matches up with several pieces of the prophecy of Azor Ahai's return. Many fans are on board with this theory, believing that Game of Thrones' 8th and final season will see Jon defeat the oncoming horde of White Walkers and Whites with the legendary sword Lightbringer. But however Game of Thrones ends, whether with Jon becoming Azor Ahai, another character proving to be the reincarnation, or Azor Ahai's successor never materializing at all, The Long Night seems like a perfect opportunity to explore where the legend came from. For more about why, visit ScreenRant.com. So, I could see, because you know how we're all sort of speculating about who could be the reincarnation of Azor Ahai at this point?
Yes.
I think that The Long Night is going to start out this in a similar way. We're not going to know who the Azor Ahai figure is. It'll only come to light after a number of seasons when he finally steps up, basically. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're not going to find out right away.
Right.
It's going to take some time.
Because since there's so many names, Eldrick Shadow Chaser, Azor Ahai, the Prince Who Was Promised, like all these different things, we don't know what the figure's name was in history at the time. All we know is these legends, and they have all these different names, so it could be anybody, really.
It could be. I have my theories, but
yeah. It's going to be fun.
We'll see. Yeah.
And this article claims that the upcoming show has been titled The Long Night, but it turns out that George R.R. Martin was mistaken and that they haven't fully decided on the name yet. So he retracted his statement and apologized, but he's confident that it's still in the running.
Okay. Our next article is from winteriscoming.net. Ghost will have a fair amount of screen time in Game of Thrones Season 8. Yes, by David Harris.
I know Travis is excited about that.
Yes, me too. I'm excited too.
Yeah.
Okay. If there was one character fans wanted to see more of, or any of, for that matter, in Game of Thrones Season 7, it was Ghost, Jon Snow's direwolf. He was written into the last scene in Stormborn, according to writer Brian Cogman, but it was cut. There was a bit where Jon came out of the crypt and Ghost came up to him and he petted him and said, "Take care of Sansa. Watch over her for me." But I guess those dire wolves are expensive. And I guess it got cut. Oh well, Ghost is there somewhere roaming around. The most we got of Ghost in Season 7 was a brief mention from Sansa about the Northern Lords not sitting around waiting for Jon to come back to Winterfell like Ghost. Well, good news, you guys. Game of Thrones special effects supervisor Joe Bauer revealed to Huffington Post that Ghost is coming back. Oh, you'll see him again, Bauer said. He has a fair amount of screen time in Season 8.
Oh,
he
that's so exciting.
I'm
so excited.
excited.
Yeah, it was brutal. We got like no Ghost in season 7. That was crazy, man. None.
Yeah, it's
What the
crazy.
All right, let's move on to Game of Thrones and history. Starting a new article this time from Bustle. The 10 most clever literary references in the Game of Thrones books by Charlotte Allen. George R.R. Martin has only written 5 out of a proposed 7 books in A Song of Ice and Fire so far, and already the series clocks in at approximately 1.77 million words. That means that Infinite Jest could fit inside the series 3.1 times over. With so much story to tell,
Crazy.
yeah, it's no surprise that Martin has found himself borrowing from other works of literature and mythology, and sneaking in a few little winks at his favorite authors as well. Here are some of the most clever literary references in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Many of Martin's sneaky references are hidden within descriptions of heraldry and lists of knights, so careful not to skip over any long, seemingly pointless passages. You might miss a few Easter eggs. Martin slips in shout-outs to his fellow fantasy writers, favorite musicians, and favorite sports teams. Mm-hmm. The lyrics to the 70s anthem, I Am Woman, are even hidden within the mottos of the great houses. That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know
I'll
that.
have to look at that.
Hear me roar.
Yes, absolutely. But perhaps most interesting of all is the way that Martin takes different elements of literature and mythology and weaves them into something new. From Tolkien-inspired characters to evil squid monsters, there are a few of the best literary references hidden in the series.
The three-eyed crow is a lot like Odin. Norse mythology is a heavy influence on the world of Ice and Fire. For one, the Norse concept of Ragnarok, or the death of the gods, is pretty close to this endless death winter that everyone is trying to avoid. For another thing, the three-eyed crow, three-eyed raven in the TV adaptation, has some not-so-subtle shades of Odin to him. Odin is the king of the Norse gods in classic Norse mythology. Like Odin, the three-eyed crow is an all-seeing figure with only one literal eye. Odin can see through the eyes of his loyal ravens and wolves, much like the three-eyed crow, and he had to sacrifice his body to the Tree of Life in order to obtain his infinite wisdom. That's so, spot on.
That's awesome.
The chief adversaries of Odin and his family are also ice giants, who are forever trying to break through the wall into the godly realm of Asgard. That's nuts.
That's crazy. The drowned god might be Cthulhu. The Ironborn of the Iron Islands worship a creepy, squiddy deity known as the Drowned God. Their catchphrase, "What is dead may never die," is also a snappier version of H.P. Lovecraft's quote, "That is not dead which can be eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die." Lovecraft's quote is referring to Cthulhu, his own creepy, squiddy monster god, who slumbers eternally beneath the sea. If that's not enough for you, Martin makes a vague, oblique reference to sea creatures known as the Deep Ones, who also appear in Lovecraft's story, The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Very interesting. Cthulhu is a fun character. There's a couple episodes of South Park where Cartman is allied with Cthulhu, and they're like going around causing mayhem together.
Cthulhu! Cthulhu! Dude! Over here! Hey, Cthulhu! Stop!
That's awesome.
For more of these 10 clever literary references, go to bustle.com and check out that article, guys. You hear that?
What was that? Lady Lisa of House Sky, Pyromancer. My face when Robin throws his new gift through the moon door. He's such a boob. Maybe it's because he's attached to one all the time.
And she has one of those emojis with like the flat mouth, like
the straight face.
Yeah, the straight face. Yep.
It was extremely satisfying watching Ghost take down Rast, that traitorous schmuck that caged and tortured our fluffy boy. My dog Luna is a big white fluffy thing, so I have a special place in my heart for Ghost.
Hi,
Aww.
Luna.
Hi, Luna. Side note, Rast looks a lot like Marin fucking Trant that Arya, spoiler alert, gloriously slays in the future. And speaking of Arya, we get to see her practice her form this episode, and it is fantastic already. She is amazing. Sorry. It's amazing to think that she looks this good and hasn't even come close to her full killer potential yet. And lastly, Bran wargs into Hodor and snaps Locke's neck like a twig. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
When Hodor, sorry, I always want to say Hodor.
Hodor.
Whose door? When Hodor comes out of it and the poor sweet giant is distraught and can't process what happened to him. In the books, it is expressly forbidden to warg into a human for ethical reasons like this, but in the shows, it's played off as an impossible task. But when Hodor looks down at his hands, I couldn't help but think that the heart-wrenching moment in the never-ending story when Rockbiter is looking at his hands and sadly repeats how big and strong they are, but he still couldn't save his friends from the nothing.
Damn.
Very good. They look like good, big, strong hands, don't they? Hodor often reminds me of Rockbiter. He's got a body of stone, but a heart of gold. Oh, also, the Pod and Brienne show is one of my absolute favorite duos. What are your favorites? They're one of my favorites, too.
Yeah, I think my favorite duo is Lysa and Rob and Arryn. I'm just kidding.
That's awesome.
It's a gross joke. Bronn and Tyrion is one of my favorites. How about you?
I have to agree with you. I think Bronn and Tyrion are my favorites.
Definitely. And Arya and the Hound are another one of my favorites.
I do like Jon and Tormund too,
Oh,
when
yeah.
they're beyond the wall together, even in these earlier seasons, but also in the later seasons as well. I like their dynamic with each other.
Definitely. So many good duos. I don't even know where to start. Sir Matthew of House Rep. Rob and Arryn, you are what you eat, eh? A boob, like Lady Lisa called him. Lysa Arryn is unbearable. As slimy as Littlefinger is, I almost feel sorry for him. I remember being so shocked at the big reveal that she killed Jon Arryn, as I was certain it was Pycelle on orders from Cersei. Sansa can't even get a day of peace when she now has to deal with her unhinged aunt and cousin. That's so true.
Yeah.
God damn, it sucks to be Sansa.
It does. Like, she feels like she's finally safe with her family.
Nope.
And then, nope, not going to happen. Okay. Axel Eriksson. Carl Tanner, what a guy. Perfectly portrayed as a legendary cutthroat back alley fighter with his two short dirks.
Yeah.
He would have bloody won one-on-one against Jon. For sure. I couldn't agree more with that.
At least in close quarters combat like that. Definitely.
Yes, you don't bring a sword to a close quarters fight. We've learned this lesson.
Yeah, that was, oh man. Jon was real close to getting offed there. For sure.
For sure.
Sir Patrick of Hindsight says, the meeting of Locke and Carl is so heavily foreshadowed, and then, nope. Jon levels up when he fights Carl. He later uses the spit in the eye technique to defeat the Thenn at Castle Black. Oh, I totally forgot about that. That's a good catch, man. Sarah Larkham says, Marjorie is playing Cersei, trying to convince her she mourns for Joffrey and doesn't think she will marry Tommen. And Cersei, who is still mourning, tells her that she knows that Joffrey was a monster. We learn of Lysa's poisoning of her Jon Arryn that started the show, and we see Lysa's jealousy of Sansa because she looks so much like Catelyn, and she knows that Peter always loved her more than Lysa.
Hello, Duncan and Rachel. It's Zach again with feedback.
Hi, Zach.
For
Hey, brother.
First of his name. One quick note from the previous episode, Oathbreaker, that I didn't get time to send in feedback for that episode, but one little nugget in the end of that episode when the White Walker is taking the baby up to the ice fortress, he was riding a horse, and the horse's reins that the White Walker was holding, go back and look what they were made of. They were made of chains. The White Walkers have chains on their horses. They know how to make chains, or they have access to a bunch of chains. Surely that means something as far as the whole debate and conspiracy theories about how did they get the chain to drag Viserion out of the lake in Beyond the Wall, Season 7. They have chains. David and Dan are showing it to us right here on the horse that the White Walker's riding. Okay, so for first of his name, Marjorie plays the game so well. She's standing there in the throne room making eyes at Tommen, and then of course Cersei steps in and shuts that shit down real quick, and then goes over to Marjorie and they have their little conversation. And Marjorie plays the sweet, innocent mourning wife so well. Of course Cersei sees through it, but they're just playing games with each other. And how Marjorie says, oh, I haven't given any thought about what happens next. Bitch, please. We all know you're scheming. Cersei's scheming. Everybody in King's Landing is scheming. But Marjorie really does play the game well. Hard choices were a little bit of a theme in this episode. Bran makes a hard choice. Dany makes a hard choice. Dany takes a stand in Meereen and says, I will rule. She's learning what Robert Baratheon never did, that winning and ruling are two very different things. Bran, of course, is there, gets away from Locke, and is right there. He can see Jon, but he makes the hard choice and decides to continue his journey north to become the Three-Eyed Raven. So two very hard choices for those characters. The easy choice would have been the opposite of what they did. That was Bran's brother. The easy thing would have been to call out to him, and you haven't seen any of his family in years at this point, I think. So, and of course with Dany, the easy thing would be to set sail for Westeros, leave Slaver's Bay behind, and just say forget about it. Head to Westeros and do her thing there, but she makes the hard choice. Okay, before we learn everything that Littlefinger and Lysa have done, when Robin meets Sansa there in the court, the room, the big room right there with the moon door, Robin says, the Lannisters killed my father with poison. And right then, Lysa's eyes cut over to Littlefinger, who's off screen, but I've never noticed that before. Right when little Robin talks about the poison, her eyes cut to Littlefinger and then look back at Robin real quick. I mean, it's the slightest little look, but little things like that I think we're all catching on this rewatch. And then I remember when Lysa basically tells the audience everything. They were behind Jon Arryn's poisoning. That was such a holy shit moment for me when we first learned it, when we first watched it. I just could not believe that those two, of course you knew Littlefinger who's got schemes going all the time, but basically what started everything in this story was schemed by Littlefinger and Lysa Arryn. God, she is psycho. She is so freaking psycho. That scene with her and Sansa after the lemon cakes, and she starts squeezing her hand, and Man, she is crazy bitch. More great scenes with Arya and the Hound. She goes through her names and, of course, adds the Hound at the end of the list. And then the next day she's out and doing her water dancing, and he's unimpressed by all the dancing moves she says. And, of course, one of his great lines of the series is, the greatest swordsman who ever lived, killed by Meryn fucking Trant. I love that. It's so funny that how much disrespect he has for Meryn Trant and his abilities. Brienne and Pod have their little conversation by the fire, and she learns something. I think she thinks of Pod as a total nincompoop up to this point, but she finds out that Pod was involved in the Battle of Blackwater, mixed it up a little bit, and killed a Kingsguard. So I think she's legit impressed that Pod has killed somebody and much less killed a Kingsguard. Okay, what the hell does Jojen's burning hand mean? It's got to be something for the last season. I don't know, maybe not, but that shit's just crazy. He says, this isn't the end, not for you, not yet. Talking to Bran, so I guess he's seen Bran's end. Does that have to do with fire? And then Mira asks, how will we know the end? And Jojen just says, you'll know. So has he seen Mira's end also? Will their end involve fire? Dragon fire, maybe? Oh my god. Can't wait to find out. That's such a puzzling scene. The end of that scene right there where he's looking at his hand. Hodor's first kill. Oh, that was epic. I love that. He just straight up lifted homeboy off the ground and snapped his neck. And then after all the fighting was over, I can't remember if it was Pip or Grin or somebody else, looked at Locke's neck and says, what in the seven hells could do that to a man? Motherfucking Hodor, that's who. Both Bronn and Carl Tanner kind of have something in common. They both know how to fight dirty and to street fight. Jaime and Jon are castle-born and castle-raised, with a master-at-arms teaching them all the proper, strikes and blows and parries, like Carl Tanner talks about in their fight. And but they don't know how to mix it up and get down and dirty if need be. So both Jaime and Jon both, I think, learned that some through the course of the series. But they're definitely an interesting parallel there, how they both have somebody to teach them a little bit about fighting dirty. God, that sword fight / knife fight between Carl Tanner and Jon is great. Man, that was a great fight sequence. He kind of, has the best of Jon for basically all that sword fight. And Jon kind of gets saved by the wildling girl who puts the axe in Carl Tanner's back, and then that kill is right there at the top of all the kills in the whole series. I love when the dog eats Ramsay's face, but this is right there near the top because Carl Tanner is such a disgusting, foul son of a bitch, and that sword through the mouth is epic. And then my last note was, burn that bitch down. Craster's Keep is just a bad place full of bad history, so I love that they put it to the torch. That's all my notes for First of His Name. Thank you guys. Keep up the great podcast. Loving it. Bye.
That was a great voicemail, Zach. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yes, sir. Always great to hear from you, man. Love it. Thanks for your feedback, everybody. All right, that's our show, episode 77. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. We love all your feedback.
Totally. And next episode, we'll be covering Season 4, Episode 6, The Laws of Gods and Men. Give it a watch and send us your thoughts. We'd love to read them on air. Holiday season is approaching, and if you'd like to support Game of Microphones without spending any extra money, you can. Just go to gameofmicrophones.com and click on our link to Amazon. This will add a cookie to your browser, and while all of your prices will remain the same, Game of Microphones will receive a little finder's fee from Amazon for everything you buy for directing you to their site. This is super easy to do, doesn't cost you a penny more, and makes a huge difference for us. A few people have asked how to donate to the podcast, and until now there hasn't been a way, but soon you'll also be able to donate to Game of Microphones at gameofmicrophones.com and or subscribe to give a monthly contribution of an amount of your choice, and we'll figure out some incentives and stuff like that to add to the benefit.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm hoping people donate to you for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. That'd be cool. It's a lot of work, so hopefully I gotta make it worth it, you know?
I know. I mean, I just do it for fun, but I know you spend like a shit ton of hours doing this, so.
Definitely. If you'd like to call, you can call us at 813-JOFFREY. That's 813-563-3739.
If you'd like to write in, you can email us at ravens@gameofmicrophones.com.
Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast.
Imslap!
Oh!
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Gab at GOM Podcast. Give us a like on Facebook and an iTunes rating/review.
And I keep forgetting to mention this, but we are also on YouTube. So give a search for Game of Microphones on YouTube, and we have all our episodes up there as well. Not video yet, but maybe someday we'll do some videos.
I'm down. That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm looking into this software, Open Broadcaster Studio, and in that case, we'd be able to, like do videos and stuff. It'd be cool.
Yeah, we
play
can do
clips
that.
from the show and everything.
I'm so cool with that. That'd be awesome.
Nice. We're also on Tumblr at Game of Microphones. All right, that's our show.
Thanks for listening.
Do you know how much gold was mined in the Westerlands this past year?
Haven't a clue.
Go on. Your best guess.
Pounds, tons, ounces?
Doesn't matter. The answer is the same.
That can't be. Where we are at currently in this series, all three of those men are dead.
True.
Are you pregnant? Like,
what?
Do you know what the horrors do to his body? It's like her mind is like going fucking everywhere. It's like,
great minds die alike.
What on earth is going on?
Total crazy lady there. It's just, you're seeing the cracks. The cracks are showing. I'm a virgin, I swear it.
Mental. Manic.
Yeah, beat her, then give her a bubble bath.
He brought you 6 crates of lemon cakes, so now you're fucking him.
Oh, right. The girl with the semen face girl. Is that the same girl?
Yes.
Oh my god.
That filthy troll.
Yeah. And soon, Sansa, you'll be free to marry little sweet Robin.
So we get a glimpse of kind of Pod's squiring skills. If you will,
or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. He's stomping on it.
God, what is going on here?
Foretelling how he dies.
Nice.
Which is being blown up and
by fire. Jon just rushes in with long claw blazing in all directions. 42.
I love how she spits on it too. She's like, fuck this place.
And they're like, burn it to the ground. Yeah.
Really going down the rabbit hole as far as like psychopath goes. There's a soul in there.
Even if it's a dark one. And I'm just surprised that he's willing to sleep with Arya nearby, because she's a creepy little girl.
I know.
Visenya. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a pony.
I always want to say Hodor.
Hodor.
Hodor. Whose door? Carl Tanner. What a guy.
Son of a bitch.